I'm going to lay it on the line as we open this meeting. We rarely, if ever, have an audience this large for a council meeting. And therefore, I will give instructions to the sheriff that none of you are to leave until the entire agenda has been completed. But being democratic about this, I will take a vote. I want to see the hands of all of those of you who are willing to stay the entire length of this proceedings today. See by a show of right hands high. All right. All right. All right, you may leave now. Okay. Listen, I'm delighted, we're delighted, really we are, to see faces out here, and invite you to stay. We know a number of you wish to make comments, and the meeting we will commence. We have a quorum of council members here, and I will turn to page 1. No, I got it. All right, the meeting will be called to order. We will have a roll call. Yola?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Connors. Councilmember McCary.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Horn.
Here.
Mayor Hatch.
Here. We have a quorum. We will now ask Mark Moden if you'll come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise.
Thank you. Please put your hand over your heart for our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That is a remarkable paragraph when you think about it, and we appreciate you being here and joining with us. We have a presentation which we would like to have at this time. Mark, I'm going to ask you to come up and introduce 4.1 on the agenda.
So I have the honor of introducing our team at El Toro Water District. Oh, by the way, I'm president of the El Toro Water District.
Thank you.
And we're really proud of our organization, and wanted to introduce Dennis, our general manager of 34 years, if I'm not mistaken, at El Toro, to do a presentation to your board. Thank you.
Dennis? El Toro Water is our water, isn't it?
It is indeed. We'll touch on our service area, but yes, we serve the entire city of Laguna Woods very happily. So, yeah, my name is Dennis Cafferty. I am the general manager of the El Toro Water District. With me today is Vu Chu, our water use efficiency analyst, and Sherry Seitz, our public affairs manager. We're going to tag team this a little bit, but we're very appreciative of the opportunity to be here. Councilmember McCary asked a very good question and asked us to come speak to you regarding when you think about weather conditions we've seen over the last few years. And the last 2 years have been fantastic. We've seen more, especially 2 years ago, we set records for snowfall, for precipitation. We had a very good year this past winter. Yet we're still asking you to conserve. And the simple question was, why? And I'm hoping that we can at least address that question. We'll see if the answers bring up more questions, which is often the case. But let's see if we can touch a little bit. Next slide, please. The district in general, just very briefly, we actually serve 5 different cities. Parts of city of Mission Viejo, part of Lake Forest, part of Laguna Hills, and part of Aliso Viejo, as well as all of the city of Laguna Woods. The district was founded in 1960, so we're approaching our 64th birthday. We serve about 51,000 residents, and about somewhere in the 30 to 40% of them are in Laguna Woods Village. So it's by far the biggest part of our community when you look at how it breaks down into those cities. We are governed by 5 elected board members, many of whom you know. at least two of them, I think, are here today. President Monin and Director Freshley are both here. And they do a great job day in and day out of keeping an eye on what's important to our customers. And I will say, if nothing else, that they are very aware of the impacts of what we do day in and day out to our customers, and that's what kind of drives them. So if we can go to the next slide. When we start talking about water supply, I think it's important to understand where the water comes from. One of the challenges or unique things when we look at Orange County is as you get to El Toro Water District, as you get to our service area, we are the first agency you get to as you go south into the southern part of the county that does not have access to the Orange County groundwater basin. Central Orange County, Northern Orange County benefit significantly from that aquifer, and in current conditions are getting more than 80% of their water from the ground. Far cheaper, significant reliability benefit. But the reality of geography and geology is such that our service area does not overlie that groundwater basin, so we do not have access or rights to that water, meaning all of our drinking water is imported from either Northern California or from the Colorado River. So we buy all of our drinking water from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, who imports and treats that water from hundreds of miles away. What we do have control of from a local supply perspective, we have significantly over the last 15 years or so expanded our recycled water capabilities. So if you back up to about 2010, we were getting all of our drinking water through one pipeline, about 96% of our total water, and about 4% of it was recycled. Over the next, through about 2019 in two phases of a recycled water project, we built 25 miles of recycled water distribution systems, built treatment facilities that allowed us to start bringing recycled water to irrigation customers, offsetting the need to import scarce potable supplies by about over 400 million gallons every year. So that changed significantly how much water we needed. So there's some level of control. And then the other is just water use efficiency practices and conservation efforts. In reality, the cheapest way to enhance and expand water supply is to use less of it. It's far cheaper than building new infrastructure that's necessary to make water spread out further. So we do that, but then for, say, the balance of our water, it is still something that has to be imported and is very dependent on weather conditions, precipitation, snowfall, and the like. Next slide, please. So this kind of shows a very current vision of where we are today. And I'll focus first on the kind of the center of the screen where it shows snowpack. In Northern California, in the Sierras, we had a reasonably good year. And as you can see, it peaked at about 123% of normal. So anything above average is something, obviously, we would very much like to see. It was a good year. It wasn't a great year. The dotted line you see above that was the previous year. That was a great year. That was historic in terms of how much precipitation and snowfall we saw. But what you have to keep in mind is that particular year followed 3 of the driest years on record. So the kind of cycles that we're seeing now is what we have to expect to continue. We've had 2 very good years. It's not a matter of if the next drought is coming, it's simply a matter of when. And so we have to remain prepared for that. But we're in pretty good shape right now in California. The part of the graph you see, or the graphic that you see on the left, are the storage facilities in California. All that blue is full of water, and that's about as good as it gets. And when we look at some of the most important ones, in fact, if we can go to the next slide, Lake Oroville is the head of the State Water Project. And the 3 pictures you see on the screen are extremely illustrative of what we have to deal with. In December of 2022, following those 3 horrifically dry years, Lake Oroville was near empty. And then as we went through a 6-month period from December of 22 to June of 23, we went from 30% full to 100% full, where they were having to discharge water over the spillway because they couldn't take anymore. That filled up in 6 months. Well, think about the opposite. It has the potential to be drawn down that fast as well. The problem in California especially is we don't have enough storage. We haven't built a significant new storage facility in decades. They are talking about a large storage facility up in Central California called the Sites Reservoir. It seems there's some room for optimism that we might actually build it. I'm hopeful that we do, because that would be a significant benefit to the ability to capture water when we have these really good years and use it when we have drier years. Metropolitan Water District, a number of years ago now, built what now is called Diamond Valley Lake. That is a huge benefit for them in terms of managing those drought conditions and drawing that storage down when we have less water. But we don't have enough of that in the state. You hear people talk about the ability to store water in the ground, and we do have significant groundwater storage, and a lot of it is underutilized. The problem is we don't have the conveyance to and from some of those groundwater basins to get it to population centers. And it's really difficult when you have a lot of precipitation at once for it to actually percolate into the ground. It's not like a pipeline where you can just fill a reservoir. So it doesn't work as well as storage does. And so I'm hopeful that we end up building some more storage that'll help us get through some of those drier periods. Next slide, please. Northern California is one thing, and it's going to come up, it's going to go down. The bigger challenge, I would say, when it comes to water supply for the state of California is how much water we can get from the Colorado River. The Colorado River Basin is essentially 7 different states that have to work together based on rules that were set up in the Colorado River Compact 100 years ago that in no way, shape, or form adequately contemplated the way society is today. It set different levels of water rights. It anticipated an amount of water in the river and allocated, let's put it in terms, counting those 7 states and the country of Mexico, which also has rights to a certain amount of water, that allocates about 16.5 million acre feet of water every year. There is simply not that much water in the river. In fact, it's probably closer to 12 million. So if everybody's taking their full share, that's why we've seen what's happened over the last 20 years in Lake Mead and Lake Powell that are both running at less than 30% of capacity. The amount of above average precipitation it would take to restore those to their full levels, it would take ridiculously wet winters for years and years and years. It's not going to happen. We're going to have to use less water from the Colorado River. All of those states, California included, and to be perfectly honest, California has the kind of highest level of rights, so has not been entirely as cooperative as they're moving to be, but we're going to have to cut back too, and especially that's going to impact things like irrigation in certain farmlands, but it's going to take all of the above, including people, indoor use, as well as outdoor use in our residential communities. Those two reservoirs, Powell and Mead, have, in fact, you can see on the chart on the left, those 2 red dotted lines define trigger points. And even when we had that ridiculously wet winter in 2022, you see January of 22 where it hits that lower red dashed line. By the middle of that year, it had come up, but we're still below that first trigger point. So even with the wettest winter we've seen on record, we didn't even get past that low point that triggers certain restrictions in some of these states. So it is going to take a continued effort for years to come to try and manage the water supply that we have available to us from both of those sources. Next slide, please. So to kind of sum some of that up, as a lot of what I've already said, but we are seeing a different climate. I am not going to pretend like I'm smart enough to tell you why climates have changed. Is it something we created? Is it a natural cycle? I don't know. I know that things are different. I know that these cycles that we're seeing, the way that rainfall is coming in these atmospheric rivers that hit and dump a bunch of water at once and then are gone for a while, the volatility of the climate and the volatility of the manner in which precipitation is hitting the ground, how much of it is rain versus snow is a huge deal. But what hits the Sierras, if it hits as snow, that's storage. What hits as rain oftentimes ends up in the ocean instead of in storage that we can make use of. So anticipating and trying to anticipate what's going to happen is difficult because what we've always done is look at historic records. Well, what happened 50 years ago may not tell us anything about what's going to happen for the next 50 years. And we're going to have to be aware of that and plan for that. Some of the challenges are going to be about infrastructure. Not only do we need to build new storage, but the maintenance of the existing infrastructure. That's something that's happening statewide, it's happening regionally, it's something that drives costs for El Toro Water District. We have a system that was started to get constructed in the 60s. So we have infrastructure that's 40, 50, 60 years old that has to be reinvested in order to ensure the reliability of the service we provide to our customers. That hits, and we're having to do more of it at a time where everything's gotten more expensive. That's impacting things statewide as well. Groundwater replenishment doesn't impact us as much directly. I will say that the very wet winter we got 2 years ago, as well as the pretty good winter we got this last year, allowed at least the Orange County groundwater basin to essentially fill up. They are they call it the basin pumping percentage, which is how much water those agencies can take out of the ground relative to their total needs. It's over 80% at this point, which is as high as I've seen for a very long time. And then again, the cost effectiveness, I mentioned earlier, conserving water is cheaper than having to build new infrastructure for sure. But the simple reality is, and I guess the simplistic answer to the question of why do we still have to talk about water use efficiency is because we know the next drought is coming. I don't know if we've already started the next one with this particular summer, or if we're going to have a couple more wet winters. There is no way to know that. We've seen such variation that the only thing we do know is that, especially given the conditions in the Colorado River, we have to continue to manage water supply and be as efficient as we can. The other thing I'll point out, the graph on the bottom of this slide, even with the wet winter we had this previous winter, the allocation of water on the State Water Project never got higher than 40%. So Metropolitan Water District has rights to 1 million acre feet per year from the State Water Project. They were only allowed to use 40% of that this year, even given the wet conditions. The previous year, for the first time, I think in 15 years or so, it actually got to 100%. But even with this wet winter, still being at 40% means that we have issues at the Colorado River, and we're still not allocated the full allotment of water from the State Water Project. Again, part of the answer as to why it's still so important that we continue to conserve water and be as efficient as we can in terms of habits and a kind of consistent consciousness of trying to make every drop stretch as far as possible. Next slide, please. So with that, there are some other things driving it as well. I've kind of talked about weather, I've talked about infrastructure, but there's also some regulatory requirements that are coming at us very quickly. The train has somewhat left the station, and I'm going to ask Vu, our water use efficiency analyst, to talk about what those regulations are and what they're going to mean, because it also informs why we have to continue to push for efficient use of water. Vu?
Mayor Hatch, Mayor Pro Tem Horn, and council members, thanks you for having us here. In the interest of time, I know there are a lot of people here with comments ready to go, so we'll speed right through and let you all go on with city business. So as Mr. Cafferty mentioned, not only is conservation driven by infrastructure issues and climate volatility, another important consideration is regulation, namely the Making Conservation a California Way of Life regulation that was recently adopted by the State Water Board on July 3rd, which was only a couple weeks ago. One of which is the regulation for indoor standard. So starting in 2025, which is approaching very fast, we're going to be regulating the indoor water use from 55 gallon per person per day to 47, and eventually will be down to 42 gallon per day in 2030. Next slide, please. The regulation also establishes a unique water efficiency standard for indoor or for outdoor residential irrigation and outdoor irrigation for CII, which is the commercial, industrial, and institutional customers, as well as HOA common areas and CD properties. So starting in 2030, the landscape efficiency factor, and for those who don't know what landscape efficiency factor means, it just basically means adequate water supply to maintain a healthy landscape. So starting in 2030, we'll be down to 0.8. If you can imagine, a healthy lawn with efficient irrigation system that does not have any overspray or wasteful water coming down the driveway is typically at a 1 LEF. But what the state is saying that you have to go down to 0.8. So with that, either you maintain a better irrigation system or change out your landscape so that it's a more efficient or drought-friendly landscape. And eventually, they want the standard, starting in 2040, to go down to a 0.55 LEF. With that, you're essentially going to not have any lawn at all. And it'll just be mostly, it doesn't have to be completely cactus, obviously, but it'll have to be either California native or drought-friendly landscape to maintain that LEF factor for water efficiency. Next slide, please. Another important regulation that recently passed in October is the non-functional turf regulation, or AB 1572. This regulation basically prohibits irrigation of potable water or irrigation using potable water on non-functional turf. So turf areas, you can imagine, in the median of the street, for example, that's not being utilized for either recreational purposes or for a play area. An important note to keep in mind is that it's only regulating the potable water and not recycled water. So there are some areas within the city, within Laguna Woods Village, that's irrigated with recycled waters. For those particular area, if you're driving by and you see turf being irrigated, then it's likely it's because it's either it's not converted yet because it's not required to per the compliance timeline, or it's being irrigated with recycled water. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the regulation timeline, this is, well, the legislature has been passed by the state, but the enforcement regulations themselves have not been established by the State Water Board. So once that regulations are established, then we'll communicate with our customers, including the city, to inform all our customers about what compliance would mean, how to go about it, and what we can do from a district standpoint to help facilitate that, as well as potential grant or rebate opportunity to hopefully offset some of the cost to be in compliance with the standard. So for the city itself, including public agency like ETWD, the important timeline that we have to keep in mind is it's actually approaching very shortly here in 2027. So by 2027, city properties or any public agency properties, including ours, will have to convert any non-functional turf area to basically drought-tolerant landscaping. So something to keep in mind as we approach that deadline. But as I mentioned, the regulations have not been established, and we are following up on that very closely. So as soon as they are announced and established, we reach out to our customers, including the city, so that we can make not only an informed but also cost-effective solutions. And that's it. That's our contact info. I'm on there. Our GM contacts info is on there as well. And our public affairs manager, Sherry, it's also on there. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, with that, conclude.
That's it.
Turn around and look at everybody. There's a million questions sitting right
Oh,
there.
gosh.
And, I don't know that we have the time to answer all of them, certainly. I'm going to ask my only question.
Sure.
I gather golf courses are functional use of law, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I missed that
Golf
first part.
courses.
Golf courses considered functional uses of land or not?
Golf courses are functional, so you're good.
I figured that.
Right. And the larger one is actually being irrigated with recycled water. So even if there is a change, because it's recycled water, it wouldn't be impacted because it's only applying to potable water.
All right, let's do this. I'm going to start over here and we'll ask questions here and then we'll see how it works out. So stay put.
Use your mic, they couldn't hear you.
That's because I'm not here. This is a mirage. I'm sorry. Okay. The both of you be up here, and we'll start with questions on my right. Angie McGarry.
So thank you both for a very, very informative presentation. When I asked our city manager to invite you, I didn't realize the depth and to the extent of which water and our situation, how deep it extends. So having heard what you've just said, having heard the long-range plan, I can't help but coming back to today. We as residents, what is your message to us other than conserve? And how do we drive home the point that we cannot continue our current habits if we intend to survive?
So I think it's important to recognize that while we're continuing to ask for conservation, we need to be conscious of the fact that there's a lot that's been accomplished already. To put it in perspective, if you back up a number of years ago, and I'll use the term acre feet that I'm not sure everybody's familiar with. An acre foot of water is about 325,000 gallons of water. So in terms of how much water we had to budget to buy, say 15 years ago, we were buying 11,000 acre feet of water every year. That number is now 7,000 acre feet. And there's been a couple years recently where it's actually been in the low sixes. So part of that is the conversion of a lot of irrigation to recycled water, but a big part of it is also the efforts of all of our customers to try to be more efficient with water. And so we've accomplished a lot already. A lot of it is things like low flow shower heads, low flush toilets, washing machines. There's a variety of appliances like that. And a lot of it is just the habits. And so we have a lot of stuff on our website. There is stuff that we put out often in our newsletter. So we have a very significant outreach program to try and encourage and educate people on what they can do to be as efficient with water as possible. And I think that's the message. I wouldn't necessarily say that we're in dire straits. And as we look at what the state is asking to do to get from 55 to 47 to 42 gallons per person per day, especially getting all the way down to 42, that's a pretty big lift. That's when you think about what we've already accomplished over the last 10, 15 years, to go down another 20% is a lot. So that's part of the reason why we are continuing to educate people. But to the extent that we're all on the same page as far as the need, and a lot of it is just a mindset and habits, and shutting off the water when you're brushing your teeth, and little things like that add up. So I think that's the important thing, is to make sure people understand the why and that everybody starts rowing in the same direction.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's it. Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. I hope you come back more often. I want to thank Councilmember McCary for agendizing it. It was really interesting. I'm curious, in LA, they're doing stormwater capture, and I realize that we don't have all the infrastructure in place or a place to store it, but do you think that might be something in the future that might come?
Yes, we continue to look for opportunities, and sometimes it's where can it make sense? Can it be cost effective? It's right now, and a lot of times we have to look at what the cost of the water we're buying that we're offsetting, and that keeps getting more expensive. Metropolitan Water District faces the same challenges, so their rates went up by about 11%. They just approved their budget, so that's going to start in January. But sometimes it's not just about that direct comparison. It's about what we can accomplish in terms of reducing the reliance on imported water. So we look for opportunities that where it makes sense, where we can build the infrastructure, can we capture enough water to make sense? I've been asked the question, I don't know how many times, and I know Councilmember Moore has asked me this specific question. When we have all this rain and there's water rushing down the creek, it's rushing down the streets, why can't we capture and use that? And part of the challenge there is, think about all of the water that we drink has to be treated to a very high standard to make it safe to drink. So if we're going to capture stormwater, if you can put it into an irrigation system, then it's not really an issue. But if we're going to try and capture it for drinking water purposes, we have to be able to treat it to drinking water standards. Well, now we have to build infrastructure that can capture the water, treat the water, and then we can only use those facilities when it's raining. So whether or not that pencils out economically becomes part of the challenge. But stormwater capture in general, especially, and there are a couple places we've looked at, all right, if we could do it here and there's an irrigation demand that would make that simpler, we're definitely looking for those opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
As our water sources become more expensive and more scarce, do you foresee a bigger appetite for desalination?
So the challenge with desalination, it is the technology absolutely exists. There's no question, it's done all over the world. There's a significant desal plant operating down in the San Diego area. The challenges are twofold. One is cost. The projects that I've seen talked about lately, and to put it in perspective, the water we buy from Metropolitan Water District just went to, I believe it's somewhere in the $1,400 and some odd dollars an acre foot. The desal projects I'm hearing about are probably about double that, at least. So there's a significant cost impact. And then one of the big challenges, the simple reality is in the state of California, when it comes to building almost anything, is the environmental pushback. There was a project planned in Huntington Beach that had a willing developer and a willing buyer for the water. And it got killed at the Coastal Commission because they couldn't get past the environmental hurdles to build that project. There's a project that South Coast Water District is looking at down in the Dana Point area. That one seems to have more legs because the way they're planning to do it from a technology standpoint is a bit different, and the environmental groups like it a lot better. So that one seems to be moving forward. But it's also very, very expensive. So as I said before, there comes a point as well where, you know, if we're buying water for $1,400 and there's water available for $2,000, well, maybe that does make sense, even though it's more expensive, because we need to accomplish something relative to water supply. But the relative of those numbers, like I say, $1,400 versus $3,000 or $4,000 an acre foot is a lot more challenging when it comes to what the rates have to be to the customer. So will it be part of the mix? It has to be, but it also has to be at a point where we can get over some of those both cost and environmental hurdles.
Anything else? Carol?
Okay. Thank you so much for I don't think I had, oh, there it is. Thank you so much for coming. We are so proud of our El Toro Water District. They're our partners. We work with them, and we're proud of the quality of your employees and the kind of work you do, and being farsighted, because it was your farsightedness, which is changing, but we wouldn't have the recycled water without that planning. And I very much appreciate everything you've done. I am concerned sometimes that these guidelines are not your guidelines. They came from the state. And I have some concerns there because, number one, when we start cutting back on water, we live in an area that if we don't water, all that vegetation becomes fire fuel. So we have some issues here that what works for one area doesn't necessarily work for another, and I think we have to be cognizant of that. We should be efficient, all of us. We shouldn't be wasteful with anything. And Americans have a bad habit of being very wasteful with many things. So that is something we need to address, but I do find myself concerned about that, and I particularly was concerned that Third Mutual, I live in Third Mutual has recycled water, and United does not have recycled water. This puts them at a terrible disadvantage, as you know, and replacing turf, I'm not, these are not your rules, I'm just complaining about what's happened because it's very expensive to replace turf. When I was the president of Third, Lucy Scheinman had an area that she wanted, and this was in Third. It's on Bahia Blanca, and I can show you where it is. That cost $50,000. It was not a huge area. It costs a lot of money to take turf out and to replant and to do all the work that's involved in it. And I'm very sympathetic to United to find them in these. They're really being pushed hard, I think. And we have somebody from United. I'm sure she could speak to it. James Tung, along with, I think you worked with Dick Palmer And they spent a lot of time trying to find those leaks that got us to where we are too. So we've had a lot of help. We've appreciated your help. We've had people who were conscientious and they worked on it too. So anyway, thank you for taking the time to come. We're pleased to be working with you. We consider you a partner.
Thank you for that, and I would echo the same. We very much appreciate the relationship we have with the city of Laguna Woods.
Years ago, I lived in a suburb of Pasadena, California, but I lived on 2 acres. There were trees coming everywhere. There was huge lawns, all kinds of plantings in that. And we got hit with the Pasadena limitations on the amount of water we could use. Okay, I did this 20 years ago, whatever it was. So I put in a drip irrigation system with many of those plants, and it was a big one, automatic. And I dreaded the monthly reports that I would receive from Pasadena. But it turned out that that drip irrigation system created credits for me I never thought possible. As I'm thinking of the village primarily, and certainly this didn't work for lawns, but for all the other types of plantings, do we do that here at all, do you know, in your drip, or is that even feasible with the size of this community, and would it be of value? Could you give me a thought on that?
Well, I mean, the investment in efficient irrigation equipment and technology and practices is going to have to be part of the solution.
Obviously it will.
Whether it be here locally, or certainly as we look at some of the larger farmland that historically have not had to worry about it and are going to have to in the future, and that's going to take investment. I know that drip irrigation exists in certain places. I know there's also some challenges with it. I've heard Kurt Weeman talk about issues with whether it be rabbits, rodents, et cetera, chewing on those drip tubes, which can impact the viability of that as an irrigation source. So there's a balance of from a pure, is it a more efficient way to irrigate? Yes, but if you're having to replace that stuff all the time because critters are getting to it, so to speak, then there's challenges there too. So I wish there was a magic wand that
There's
we
not,
could.
okay.
Unfortunately,
It worked in Israel, though, didn't it?
What's
That's
that?
It worked in Israel.
And desal up. I mean, they're
Yeah.
when you think about desal, they're the poster child worldwide.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you very much, really. How many would agree with us that this was very informative and useful? Let me see.
Thank you.
Are we allowed one drink when we get home this afternoon?
Just one.
I have a question. Could I ask too late?
Yes. Well, we'll allow one exception. Do you want to, what's your question?
Okay, my question is, as you
Mr. Tung, would you mind coming to the podium?
Up here.
well, since I knew Dennis before, so I don't mind her ask crazy questions.
You have one, only
As
one.
you indicate, all our water supplies come from not here, from outside, either from Colorado River or northern central California, such as San Joaquin Basin. Well, my question is, I'm a geophysicist, so I always pay attention to the earthquake and the faults. Now, what is the percentage of the water supply to your Altura Water District if there's earthquake interrupt the aqueduct from Central California to our Southern California, goes through the San Andreas Fault or Garlic Fault. So in other words, talk to Carl.
So you want to know the impact of an earthquake on our ability?
Yeah, what will be the water shortage
All right, thank you.
percentage?
All right.
That's my
And
question.
really quick, before we get into like a question and answer session, this is an agenda item. There is an opportunity for public comment. My suggestion would be to allow anybody who wants to provide public comment, whether that's questions or comments, to do that all at once. And then
I would agree with that, but no one else has raised
Yeah.
their hand.
There might not be other public comments, but
All right, do you have a comment on that?
While I can't speak to a specific percentage, I will say that the potential for earthquakes and the potential interruption on water supply is something that we are very cognizant of, think about all the time. I can tell you the Metropolitan Water District has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in reliability projects focused purely on potential seismic issues. We have investigated and potential issues, done emergency exercises. We have a 275 million gallon reservoir. So if our water supply, import water supply is interrupted, depending on the time of year, we can go a pretty good amount of time that we can withstand a supply interruption. If it's a major infrastructure issue like damage to the aqueduct, they're going to mobilize everything to try and get things back in service as quickly as possible. But I can tell you, if there's something like that, then we're not going to be asking for a little bit of conservation here and there. We're going to be, and it'll be all over the news too, that we're going to have to drastically cut back. But it is, we look at where earthquake faults are. We look at where our sources of supply are. We've done a good job of trying to diversify where water comes into our system. But it is certainly something that is a potential risk that every water agency has to face.
Thank you, thank you. If any of you have any further questions, will you stay outside? No, I'm not going to call on you. Can you stay outside the door for 5 minutes? And anybody that would like to go and ask you questions, you can do that. All right, thank you all. Okay, we have some other public comments, I understand. And what did I do with my list? Okay. Item number 5. Wait a minute, these are public comments on issues not on the agenda. That's public number 5. Okay, we'll pick that up on that particular item. Traffic ordinance. Okay. That was Bill O'Dowd. We don't have anything on the OCPA. We have public comments from Vicki Johnson and Mike Roy. Vicki, you're on. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Vicki Johnson, Laguna Woods resident. I have a master's from Stanford in computer engineering. It included electrical engineering. I have an MBA in finance from NYU. I oppose Laguna Woods joining the Orange County Power Authority. I oppose agendizing a town hall for OCPA to do more marketing for our uninformed residents. In February, SCE presented to this council on rates. There were complaints about SCE, especially by Councilmember Sherry Horn. If you vote to join OCPA, you, not SCE, will be in the hot seat next. Residents will be coming here to ask, why is my electricity bill under OCPA higher than it was under SCE? Why did you switch the entire city to OCPA? Why did you join OCPA when it was a startup with a bad history? Why did you join after other cities like Huntington Beach just left? How can OCPA claims about renewables possibly be true? I'm concerned that you, council, do not have the technical or financial expertise to vet OCPA or answer such questions. As far as I can tell, Councilmember Sherry Horn does not have a college degree. You will be in the hot seat, not SCE. You will have voted to put our city into the risky energy business with very long-term contracts involving tens of millions of dollars and huge liabilities. Your city manager will spend valuable time dealing with OCPA issues. There is a mountain of bad press about OCPA, a lot from just last year, 2023, full of warnings. I want to play a very short video of an Irvine City Council member on the board talking about the FBI, corruption, and OCPA. Let's see, get this going here. Fortunately, we can't use the big screen.
Now she's expecting her sons. Okay, so here's the deal. This is what the FBI says. Corrupted. They say what happens is in the county parties, this is both parties, what the county parties will do is they'll get into office, they'll get on these boards, and then especially if there's a lot of money coming through the agencies, like with OCPA, there's a lot of money coming through and other things, they'll start skimming off that money by giving contracts to their friends. So their friends will start a business, it's just them, they're a consultant, they'll give them $100,000 a year or so. It's just, and then it's this favor system where if someone's giving you $100,000, then you help them out with their campaign and you make sure that they're appointed to the right things. And it's very, very hard to break into that and stop that. And so I can't tell you, even after, me speaking out about potential bribery, people still offer me bribes. You would not believe it. People still offer me bribes, even though they
Ms.
should
Johnson,
know
your
better.
time's up.
OCPA needs several years to prove itself if it survives. That was an Irvine City Council member on the board of OCPA. Just wait. Be prudent. Do your due diligence and protect our city. Thank you.
No comment. Let me get one thing straight. Are you accusing, ma'am, that this city council has voted to join the OCPA? No. Is that your accusation, yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask the city attorney now, has that ever occurred?
So it has not. There has been no vote on
Are
it.
you saying that this council has never voted on any joining of anything at all to do with energy here?
That is correct.
I would suggest to the members who have heard that there is absolutely no merit in what you have heard. Now, we have another speaker on the same subject. Mike, why don't you come up? And let's see what you have to say.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm sorry? That's on your time, not mine, I hope. I'm Mike Rao, a Laguna Woods resident. I have a PhD in mathematics from Stanford University. That's relevant here. Council member Sherry Horn wrote to the Globe, July 11, how the city council conducts business. We all have opinions, but we need informed opinions to guide us. Saying we shouldn't learn more or look into an issue just because a person opposes would be malpractice on our part. At the council meeting on May 15, it wasn't just a person who argued against joining the Orange County Power Authority, OCPA, but a group of well-informed individuals, including 2 with PhDs. They took the time and effort to warn the council of the potential hazards and costly liabilities that would be incurred by joining OCPA. Instead of thanking them, Sherry Horn dismisses them as just persons who oppose. When I spoke to the GRF board on June 4th to inform them that the city council had agendized sales pitched by OCPA, they could have serious repercussions for Laguna Woods, I was told they had not heard about it. Claims were being made that OCPA's presentation on May 15th was not a sales pitch, but an information-only session in which the CEO talked for only 10 minutes. Actually, the CEO, Joe Mosca, and a pair of advocates for OCPA who work for an organization that has received funds from OCPA but did not disclose it, spoke for nearly half an hour. Mosca's presentation was obviously a sales pitch. Sherry Horn has said that she agendized the OCPA company to make their presentation in response to interest shown by her constituents. It was a sales pitch. Then on May 15th, Sherry Horn said that another city council should be devoted to a town hall for OCPA. There are words and there are actions. Ayn Kratian spoke at a meeting of the Concerned Citizens Club on April 2nd, where she presented photographs and named the 5 city council members. She stated with glee how OCPA only has to get 3 of you to vote in favor to get a done deal. Then she said that there are a couple of city council members present, and she called out specifically twice to Sherry Horn that she will explain what's coming next. If Laguna Woods joins OCPA, one council member will be appointed to the OCPA board and receive compensation of something like $300 per meeting and for hours of travel and training. This is a conflict of interest if you vote. I ask each of you to publicize your refusal to accept compensation from OCPA to avoid any appearance of a conflict of interest before you further agendize OCPA or vote. Thank you.
You're welcome. I will deem that not worthy, very candidly, of comment from anybody. As I stated once before, this board has not ever made a decision or discussed in private or public the merits or demerits of the energy and what we are going to do with respect to that. I'm a pretty not easy mark, but I'm certainly ingenuous, and I listen, and I digest, and I am offended when representations are made that question the integrity or the actions of this group of people or our staff. And I want to make that very, very clear, extremely clear. You are free to come back and you are free to express your opinions. But I caution you that you should be accurate, and it better be accurate. I don't get upset very often, but please understand that I am offended by what I have heard today. There will be no other comments from members of this council. Is that all right, Counselor? Okay. All right, now, on a happier note, there are a lot of you out there that have something to say, or at least have a spokesperson or two that would like to say it. I do not have any of your names, so could I have those of you who wished and wanted to speak, raise your hand, and we have, oh, good.
We still have all these other public comments before the big group.
All right, why don't we come on, and you have, all right, Mark, get over with all these lovely ladies. All right. All right, here's who I have. Is Jerry or Sarah Miller? Hi, Jerry, come on up. Then I have Bill O'Dowd, but I have him on the, yeah, I have you on the item that's coming up on the traffic stuff. That's what you wanted, didn't you? The traffic ordinance, number 5. Isn't that on the agenda?
It's a non-agenda item.
It is
so that
not,
would be,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go with this order then. Bill, you'll follow. And then I have a Tula Larson. Where is Tula? Tula, stand up so I don't forget you. All right, stay put. All right, and then Mary or Manny H. Stay put. Okay. And Sherry, you're up. That's you.
Want me to go?
Yeah. Now, how many minutes they have? 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Give it all you got.
I live against the wall on El Toro, and I lived here for 8.5 years and never had a problem. And then all of a sudden I came home one day and all the foliage was gone. I have a 4.5-inch wall. I'm 5'2". My wall is 4.5 inches. All the foliage is gone. So I called our landscapers and they told me it wasn't them, it was the city. So they told me to call April. I called April. I asked her to drive by, which she did. She said, "Oh my God, it will never happen again." Well, it happened again. So then I wrote a scathing email and Cynthia Connors came to my house. She looked. I said, "Look at how disgusting this is. I have barbed wire hanging. I have dead branches." And she said, not to mention the noise that now comes through. I said, "Yes." So she tried to fix it. I have pictures. All the trees that she had planted died. So after we had this big rain this year, I sent her an email, and it said, "We had a great rain, just as a subtle reminder. I hope they don't cut the foliage again." 2 weeks later, they came and cut it again, the worst. So the barbed wire has been cut. Like I said, I have a 4.5-inch wall, or 4.5 feet. My neighbors, their foliage was not cut. Like I said, I lived here 8.5 years and never had a problem. I have pictures against the wall of other people whose foliage has not been cut or touched. So I sent a claim in. My claim did not ask for money. I asked that either they hire Moon Valley, because I can't do it, our landscapers can't do it, it's city. Moon Valley to fix it and put it back, or cut everyone's the same. You know, I shouldn't have to suffer. When I'm at my kitchen window, people in their cars we look eye to eye. They can look in my home. The fire engines, that night, the lights come in my house now. When I open all my windows, I have 4 windows that open up to El Toro. 2 bedrooms, my den, and my kitchen, which is disgusting. When I open my kitchen window, I have to constantly wipe down. You know, if I'm cooking, I need to open my kitchen windows. So now that the barbed wire has been cut, what is going to be done? What's going to be done? My claim was denied by the city manager, by you. So was it, and then I just showed Carol my pictures of the barbed wire hanging, and I can see across the street, which I've never been able to see before. And she says to me, "I garden too." It has nothing to do with gardening. This is safety. So is anything going to be done?
All right. Let me ask you one question. If I were to get in my car and drive over and drive by I would go to the gate. I mean, I would go where the signal is to make a right turn, correct?
Go in the first
Yeah, go
cul-de-sac
into-
on the right.
yeah, into 5, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see on the corner a hedge with trees behind the hedge. Is that correct?
Are you on the street or are you inside?
On the street, going to make a right turn. I'm stopped at the stop sign, waiting to turn right. That's your house right on the corner, isn't it?
No, that's
Where-
not my house. My house has the barbed wire hanging. There's houses that have complete foliage as you know, a privacy.
I'll tell you what we'll do.
I'm going to call point of order or order of the day.
Yeah.
We're in violation by having a conversation back and forth.
We weren't, we were asking a question.
We are in violation. We're in violation.
I would like to ask that we refer this to the city
Yes,
manager.
that's
Could you do
precisely.
that?
Thank you.
It
Yes,
has been
that's appropriate.
referred to the city manager.
He denied my claim, so what do you want me to do?
that,
Why is
Carol.
it being referred to him?
So I'll just step in. This is, at this point, this is a legal matter. Ms. Miller has filed a claim. The city council.
I did?
The city council had rejected the claim that you filed. And so we have advised the council not to comment on
All right,
something where
fine.
litigation has been threatened.
Thank you very much. All right. All right. Let's see. Terry or Jerry Miller? Okay. Would you?
I think your next speaker is Tula Larson.
All right.
Or I'm sorry, Bill O'Dowd and then
I
Tula.
had it backwards. All right, Tula.
Tula, take a seat real quick. Bill, I think, is next up. Bill O'Dowd has been
All
waiting.
right, Bill.
Every time he stands up.
I'll be quick because you'll be here until Friday. I gave you a handout, doesn't really say anything new. Did you pass those around yet, Yoli? I appreciate that. It's about the traffic ordinance on El Toro and wherever else it's relevant. I will say that I make 4 proposals. Two of them cost nothing, one is very inexpensive, and the 4th generates revenue. What can you say? But I do appreciate the ordinance, but I do think we need to do more to let people know that it's in place, because unless they read the fine print at the back of the,
Could you talk into the mic? I'm sorry.
yeah, I don't know if anybody reads this except me. Otherwise, nobody knows there's an ordinance. And a few signs wouldn't hurt. I looked over the wall myself and saw a detour sign, so I know we can put them up. I wouldn't recommend that it say detour, but something about the ordinance and going more slowly. Chris gave me some, and Captain Aldi provided some information on enforcement. It's been going up. I think it would be very nice if it continued to go up, and people would get the message that they're not supposed to be driving noisily through our village, especially along El Toro, where the wall is 4.5 feet. If you live behind the Great Wall of Molten, if you know where that is, that's about 50 feet, as near as I can tell. But our wall is very low, and it does get very noisy. Other than that, I gave you an interesting picture, aerial photograph of the village, which shows why a traffic ordinance wasn't needed in 1964. I would like to just say thank Shari Horn and all you council members for giving your time to do the work that you do. And by the way, I have a PhD.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Bill? Yeah. Have you brought this issue to the attention of the council previously via email or anything?
Yes, I have. I've been here before.
I thought that was you.
Yeah, that's me.
I wanted you to know that I reached out to the village security chief and recommended that.
Shall I call point of order? We have a lot of people here, and we
Okay.
need to get through, and
Well-
we're in violation when we have conversation back and forth.
Okay,
That's why I keep
I just would say,
I think the council members can make a comment, pardon me.
yeah,
I think,
anyway.
Okay, what is,
Send me an email or talk. I was having in touch with Chris and Carol. They can tell you, maybe answer your question, but if not, just email me. Thank you.
thank you.
I don't want to be in violation.
So for clarification, I'm going to ask our attorney to give us the rules about, not that your views aren't important, but we're in violation of the Brown Act when we're having conversations back and forth.
So for the benefit of the audience, this is general public comment. These are items that are not on the agenda. The council is not permitted under state law to engage in a full discussion on any items that are brought that are not on the agenda. They are allowed to provide brief comments. This is, I think, going to be an exceptionally long meeting if we engage in back and forth with each commenter, and the more comments you provide back and forth, the more you risk crossing a line into a full discussion. So my recommendation would just be to take the public comment, listen to it. The council cares about what everybody has to say, but not to engage back and forth.
Thank you.
Tula Larson.
Hello. Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Tula Larson. I was here at the last board meeting. I'm a policy intern with the Office of Orange County Supervisor Katrina Foley, who represents the 5th District, including the wonderful city of Laguna Woods. And I'm just here again to provide an update on the supervisor's work. So to start, at the June 25th Board of Supervisors meeting, the board approved the final version of our district's electric bike safety ordinance, and this will increase safety regulations in the county's unincorporated areas. This e-bike ordinance includes common sense provisions requested by the community, such as grouping restrictions, sidewalk speed limits, helmets for minors, requirements for yielding to pedestrians, and more. Next, in the city of San Juan Capistrano and bordering the city of Laguna Niguel, Compass Energy Storage proposed the building of a battery energy storage system facility. This would provide 250 megawatts of clean energy to residents, yet concern lies over potential safety hazards, including fire threats in the region. This site is embarking on an environmental review process where residents can share their feedback on the facility's potential impact, and the county will keep you updated as the comment period opens and public meetings begin. And I encourage everyone to sign up for our newsletter, the Supervisor Katrina Foley's, to receive updates on our work through the supervisor's website. If any of you in the public need help, I can sign you up. Or if you have any questions or concerns related to county services, we are happy to help. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tula. Say hi to the supervisor and thank her. Thank you. Mary?
Thank you. Mayor Hatch and the Board of Supervisors, I am one of 12. We're just going to do a brief 1-minute presentation. My name is Mary, and I live in Orange County, and I've been a resident for 50 years. We're volunteers with United Sovereign Americans, not spokespersons. United Sovereign Americans is a nationwide organization with thousands of active volunteers in over 20 states. Today, I come to you as a concerned citizen sharing alarming information about our state's voter database uncovered through thousands of hours of research conducted by highly qualified and credentialed data teams. While the numbers are staggering and somewhat difficult to comprehend, one thing is clear: they just don't add up. Just like your checkbook must balance, so much our votes. If you had $10,000 in your bank account that you had deposited, you would certainly want to know what happened. And if a company had the significant discrepancy in their books, they would most certainly conduct an audit. In fact, yearly audits are required by law for all public companies.
Good afternoon. My name is George Aguirre. I've been a resident of Orange County for 30 years. Our audit of the 2022 election using only official data provided by state election officials shows that the 2022 election may not have been accurate or legally compliant. We're not saying one candidate won over another or that any election should be overturned. The state's official data from a certified election shows that the votes as counted were not all valid and accurate under the law. Today, we present you with a resolution demanding an end to the inaccuracy and uncertainty plaguing our elections, along with a summary of our findings and the laws that apply. We are happy to meet with you to go over this information, including more detail about the specific findings. If you have any questions that I cannot answer now, we will commit to getting you the answer in writing from the United Sovereign Americans executive team as soon as possible. This data and our request for an investigation have been shared with state election officials and law enforcement. It's essential that you, as our representatives, make it clear that these must be taken seriously.
Today, we come to you, our closest elected representatives, for support and action. We're asking that you listen to the resolution, ask questions if you have them, and then vote promptly for its passage. Your action on this resolution will illustrate your dedication and support to the concerns of your constituents and your country. We will read the resolution, and our final speaker will conclude our presentation. Resolution for a legally valid 2024 general election. Whereas it is a recognized civil right in the United States for every citizen to have free and fair elections. Quote, and the right of suffrage can be denied by a debasement or dilution of the weight of a citizen's vote just as effectively as by wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise. End of quote, U.S. Supreme Court, Reynolds versus Sims, 1964.
Good afternoon. Whereas it is the duty of our election officials to guarantee our elections are accurate and free from distortion or manipulation. Quote, Congress seeks to guard the election of members of Congress against any possible unfairness by compelling everyone concerned in holding the election to a strict and scrupulous observance of every duty devolved upon him while so engaged. The evil intent consists in the disobedience to the law, end quote. Supreme Court in Re Coy, 1888. Whereas our constitutional system of representative government only works when the following four tenets of an election are upheld. Number one, the voter rolls must be accurate. National Voter Registration Act, 1993. Number two, votes counted must be from eligible voters. U.S. Constitution, 14th Amendment, Section 2. Number three, the number of votes counted must equal the number of voters who voted. And number four, there can be no more than 1 in 125,000 ballots in error by the voting system. Help America Vote Act, 2002. Thank you.
Whereas open source audit of the California 2022 general election conducted by California citizens has uncovered evidence of massive inaccuracies that appear to violate both federal and state laws, including 5,886,198 ineligible or uncertain registration violations found within the California State Voter Roll Database, 2,776,939 votes cast by ineligible or uncertain registrations, 123,785 more votes counted than voters who voted. No one knows who cast them. 2,776,849 apparent voting violations are in excess of the legal standard of system accuracy for a valid federal election. The maximum allowable system errors for the 2022 general election in California was 90. Certification is defined by law, and attestation of accuracy and compliance appears to have been fraudulent and illegal.
Whereas these findings trample legal accuracy requirements of the voting system during a federal election. Accuracy is defined as the ability of the system to capture and report the specific selections and absence of selections made by a voter without error. Whereas the intent of the voters must be known factually before certification can be lawfully conducted. Certification of an election that varies from the law is an abridgment of the civil rights of the citizens, a fraud ab initio. United States v. Throckmorton, 1878. Quote, "From time immemorial, an election to public office has been, in point of substance, no more and no less than the expression of qualified electors of their choice of candidates." In quote, U.S. Supreme Court, United States v. Classic, 1941. Whereas the 2022 general election appears to have been invalid, depriving us of the guaranteed protection of our natural rights under a government duly and provably chosen by us, the American people, resulting in incalculable damage to our families, our way of life, and the fabric of these United States.
Therefore, we call upon our representatives to provide relief to the people and the assurance of domestic tranquility by joining us in demanding a valid 2024 general election that upholds these existing laws and equitable principles of law. Number one, proof of citizenship, identity, and eligibility required to register and vote, not anonymous attestation. Number two, voter rolls certified, accurate, and available for public review and challenged 30 days before the start of early voting. Voters added after that date must bring proof of citizenship, identity, and address in person to a qualified official at each polling place. Number three, hand-marked secure ballots similar to currency. Where imaging technology is used for tabulation, the security features must be verifiable in the ballot image. Number four, systems, machine, security measures, infrastructure, and conduct are required to be compliant with federal law for fraud prevention regarding risk assessment, certification, testing, and implementation. Number five, adjudication must be signed off by party, candidate, and trained citizen witness after being given full and effective observation rights. Candidates and trained citizens must be allowed immediate access to ballots, ballot images, and cast vote records. Number six, ballots, regardless of entry source, election operations and systems must maintain end-to-end chain of custody from voter to vote count to final canvass, including auditability and witness transfer with paper records.
Number 7, a NIST, N-I-S-T, compliant, randomized, statistically valid, end-to-end audit with a 95% confidence level of all elections pursuant to the 14th Amendment, Section 2, must be performed. These audits are to be conducted by qualified, insured, and bonded security, forensics or financial auditors, not personnel from within the election system. Reconciliation will include the vote count, real physical ballots, adjudication, CVRs, ballot count, qualified voter count, custody transfer, and all other paper and electronic election systems, including logs. Number 8, if the total of unique variances above is more than 10% of the margin of victory, a new election must be held. In the state, for those candidates affected, unless the issues can be provably corrected by a manual hand recount and a full review of records.
Waiver of requirements is not allowed. Only end-to-end system compliance from registration through certification can guarantee the intent of the people is accurately recorded. Be it resolved, we the people stand in support with the concerns and remedies presented here. We implore the City of Laguna Woods, Orange County Board of Supervisors, California Legislature, Federal Legislature, law enforcement, federal and state prosecutors, judges, and both California Secretary of State and county registrars of voters to cooperate and fulfill these firm requests of the people. You have just heard a powerfully written resolution outlining massive inaccuracies in our 2022 election from registration through the certification. In it, you heard us ask for meaningful remedies that will proactively protect the validity of the 2024 general election for all Americans. In fact, the resolution cited many U.S. Supreme Court precedents that support the need for such actions. Our laws are being ignored.
The bottom line, the checkbook is not balancing, and we need certainty. The voting system, which controls our most vitally important right, the right to choose our representatives, is not producing an accurate, trustworthy result. Do you think that these anomalies within our election system, a system which is part of our national security infrastructure, should continue to be ignored? How much is it costing us not to fix the problem? How much is it costing our GDP, our military, our foreign policy, our health, the self-esteem of our children and young people, and how much is it costing our dignity to keep fighting each other? The cost is immeasurable. So I urge you to show your agreement by passing the resolution. Our website, showcasing our initiatives nationwide, has some extremely informative videos that explain the anomalies and apparent violations of law that are found here in California, as well as in other states. The website is uniteforfreedom.com. That's unite, U-N-I-T-E, the number 4, freedom.com. Thank you.
Hello, board members, council members, mayor. My name is Urson Russell, lifetime resident of Orange County. Some amazing, wants to go all over. Some amazing memories here in your community of Laguna Woods. What you've heard here today is a culmination of thousands of hours of work by our highly qualified and credentialed volunteer data teams from California and across this country. Let's take a step back for a second and look at the big picture of what's going on. Large numbers of Americans, including many right here in California and even in Laguna Woods, have questions about the trustworthiness of our elections. I think we can all agree that we wish this was not the case, but official data shows these concerns are valid, and the law says resolving them is essential in securing our liberty. At the same time, government representatives at all levels are not being transparent or responsive to what our citizens' audits have found. Our right to choose our representatives in legally valid and transparent elections is the foundation upon which our constitutional republic was established. That right has been bravely protected over the past 2.5 centuries by the sacrifices of our brothers, fathers, our mothers, and our sisters. You on this board today have a chance to show everyone who defended American liberty and the citizens that you all represent, that you value it also by passing the resolution which I'm about to provide to all of you, demanding a valid general election in 2024. We appreciate your time today. God bless this great community here you have in Laguna Woods. God bless the United States of America. And may you guys all find the wherewithal to do the right thing today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Sorry,
you all
I-
for coming. We appreciate your remarks. Thank you for having the resolution that, and certainly council will review it, and certainly we will review it. And we appreciate your time. And drive carefully, okay? And thank you again. We'll take just a 5-minute break. Mark, did you have something? All right, we'll let everyone leave that wants to, and then you can address us.
You may have to hold it.
Thank you, Laguna Woods City Council. My name's Mark Monin, and I'm a Laguna resident, Laguna Woods resident, and also president of the El Toro Water District. My item is not an agenda item. It has nothing to do with Dennis and what he spoke about. I just wanted to bring everybody here update on the heli hydrant program that's been going on in Orange County. I'm a former Orange County Fire Authority, PCF at Station 24, and the heli hydrant program is with water districts and also Orange County Fire Authority. There's 3 heli hydrants in the city of Yorba Linda that they put up. It's where a tank of water is located. They press a button on the helicopter, it fills up. The helicopter drops down with a big tube and fills that in 30 to 60 seconds. Our goal is to try to get more water on the fire quicker. So there's 3 set up in Yorba Linda. There's 1 or 2 in Laguna Beach. Molten Niguel just put up 2, and Santa Margarita's working on some also. So I was just talking with Don Wagner, the chairman of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, and Orange County Fire Authority out of Fullerton Airport took the Board of Supervisors up and showed them the various heli hydrant located in Orange County. So the program is to get, again, more water on the fire faster. A second thing that I really think this city council's done is it's been very important to me that we put another fire station in our area. And it's meant a lot to me, all the work that you've been doing. Station 22 is one of the busiest in the county, and they do great things. I think another station would be very helpful to our community. It would also help Laguna Hills, Aliso Viejo, and our city and others in supporting the boundaries of their stations. So I just wanted to thank you for all the work you've done on that. It's good to get another station on the other side of Molten and El Toro, and I want to thank you for everything you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Hopefully.
Does anyone else wish to speak? If not, public comments are complete, and we will move to the city treasurer's report.
Good afternoon. I will be presenting the City Treasurer's Report as of June 30, 2024. The city's total assets as of June 30 totaled $15,054,323. The general fund consisted of $11.5 million, and special revenue funds consisted of $3.4 million. Assets are broken into cash and cash equivalents, which totaled $544,067. Pulled money investment accounts totaled $9.1 million. which included LAIF at $812,894 and OSIP at $8.3 million. The city's investments consist of certificates of deposits of $5.3 million, which total the $15,054,323. There was one CD that matured in June 2024 with principal balance of $245,000, which was reinvested with a new purchase in June for the same amount for a 60-month term at a 4.65 yield rate. The city's trust funds as of June 30 consist of other post-employment benefits trust account with an ending balance of $138,502, which had a net gain of $1,556, and the pension liability trust account with an ending balance of $169,211. The net gain for that trust account was $1,994. Staff's recommendation for City Council is to receive and file a City Treasurer's report for the month of June 2024.
Thank you. I'll move the staff recommendation.
All right. Let's have a motion on that. Any comments on that? Thank you, as always.
I moved, or Cynthia moved it, I seconded it.
You seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The number of items listed on the consent calendar, these are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There'll be no separate discussion on any of these unless a member of the City Council or staff requests that the item be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion. Members of the public, however, may address the City Council on any items appearing on this calendar, regardless of whether an item is removed for separate discussion. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on an item on the consent calendar? No? Any?
I move the.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. McCary has stepped out for a moment
I didn't hear anybody else say it, but I didn't know if they did.
for both of those. All right, we move now to public hearings. Item 8.1, this is the process we will go through, and then I'll turn the matter over to our city manager. He will prepare give the report. It'll be open for public hearing. We'll receive testimony, if any. Then we'll close the public hearing and adopt or refuse to adopt the amendment. Chris?
All right, thank you very much. Today, we're asking the City Council to consider a sign program amendment application that was applied for by TATLW LLC, doing business as the Artistry. This relates to a property on Moulton Parkway that in the past has been referred to as the Helm Center. It's 24902 Moulton Parkway. That two-story office building has two tenants currently, the Artistry and Laguna Woods Dental Care. The Artistry submitted this sign program amendment to amend a sign program the City Council previously approved, SP 1508, which was the first sign program to allow for various signage at this location. The City Council unanimously approved that prior sign program in August of 2021. This image is also included in your agenda packet, but just for the benefit of the viewing audience, what's outlined in yellow here is the parcel that we're talking about today. Moulton Parkway is to the immediate left of it. Laguna Woods Village is located to the right of it, and then just south of that location is McCormick and Son Mortuary. The previous sign program approved a variety of signage for the property, but I wanted to start with this image from that previous sign program. 3 wall signs were approved on the elevation fronting Moulton Parkway. So in the image that's on the screen, there are 3 signs that are designated by just the word tenant sign, and then there's a placeholder for a logo there. But those 3 signs were approved in 2021. Currently, where my cursor is, the sign on the far left, is where it reads Laguna Woods Dental Care on the existing building. The middle sign is where it reads the artistry currently, and this 3rd sign on the right of the image on the screen, or on the southernmost portion of that elevation, that isn't constructed right now. That space is just the wall for the building. This sign program would, among a variety of actions, eliminate the approval for that unconstructed sign. So this frontage would only be permitted to have 2 wall signs, again, in the existing locations of the Laguna Woods Dental Care sign and the artistry sign. This 3rd sign would no longer be permitted. The sign program amendment does propose a new east-facing wall sign. The approximate location of it is shown in this image, which again is also in your agenda packet. The intended purpose of this sign is to provide enhanced visibility for the 1st floor unit, which is the artistry. The door that you see with some red text here where my cursor is, that is the main entrance for the building. Right now, there is no signage above it. The only signage is on the door itself. And then there are a couple of signs required by the city's sign ordinance, or by the city's cannabis storefront retailer ordinance, that are located to the left of it in this image here. This building, by way of background, used to have many tenants in it. 2 is a smaller number of tenants. And so if you look at the ground floor of this building, there are quite a number of doors that used to enter into a variety of separate units. The entirety of the 1st floor is now occupied by a single tenant. And so as we understand the tenant's intent with this application, the idea is that when somebody parks, this wall sign would provide greater clarity on which door they should walk to when they exit their car. Now, this sign does front a residential area. There's the parking lot, and then there's a trail area. I think it's an equestrian trail, some plantings, and then some of the Laguna Woods Village residence buildings are behind it. This sign, because it abuts a residential area, would not be illuminated. So these would simply be metal letters or metal graphics affixed to the wall itself. There would be no internal illumination. Obviously, at night, there is passive illumination in the area. There are some other light poles. There's one to the right. There's some wall-based lighting, and obviously you get some ambient lighting from inside coming through the glass doors. So we don't expect that it would be indistinguishable at night, but it certainly wouldn't be illuminated like backlit or internally illuminated channel letter signs that you might be more familiar with. Yes, absolutely.
The way I'm looking at this, I think that's into the parking lot, isn't it?
Yeah, this faces the parking lot
Right,
side
so
of the
this
building.
isn't on the street.
No, this is
into the
parking lot side,
And the
yes.
reason you brought up the light would be the wall behind.
The
But
residence behind,
Right now, this is right into the parking lot.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. They are also proposing a new sign at the upper side of the wall that faces the mortuary. So this image right here is taken as if you're standing where the mortuary is, looking towards the building. To the left, just off the picture, that would be Moulton Parkway. So you'd be looking northbound on Moulton Parkway. As staff understands it, the intended purpose of this sign is to provide enhanced visibility from points south of the building, particularly from northbound Moulton Parkway. Right now, the existing wall sign for the business is on this wall over here, but perpendicular to how we're looking right now, facing Moulton Parkway. So there is some potential that a vehicle traveling north, by the time they see the wall sign, if they're not already in the far right lane, they may end up missing the driveway and then having to make 2 U-turns to get back into that path of travel. This sign is intended to provide some enhanced visibility for the building from that northbound Moulton approach, and more generally from anywhere south of the building. This wall sign, it would also be a permanent wall sign. This one has a backing on it, so if you're familiar with the sign that is on the Moulton Parkway side, those are individual letters that are affixed to the building itself. This is the same kind of concept, but instead of them being affixed to the building themselves, they've proposed to affix them to a backing that is color coordinated with the existing, I'm going to say, greenish color on that side of the building. So the lettering and the logo would still extend upward from that backing. It would still be dimensional like that, but they wouldn't be affixed to the stucco of the building directly. They'd be affixed to that backing, which would be affixed to the stucco. The previous sign program that the council approved in 2021 also included approval for a monument sign. The monument sign at the time is shown on the left image there. That identifies a single tenant at the site, which is how once upon a time it was occupied. And then it provided for the sign to be refaced in the manner shown on the image on the right, identifying 3 subtenants and the main tenant, which at the time was the Helm Center. So these 2 options essentially provide for a choice of identifying either a single tenant or 4 tenants. The proposal before you today would allow for that sign to be refaced to identify 2 tenants, which is how the building is currently leased. So there would be a larger tenant sign at the top with a logo allowed, and then a smaller tenant sign below that. Important to note on this monument sign that it wouldn't actually change the physical dimensions of the sign that is out there. This is just allowing for the refacing of the sign to identify 2 tenants as opposed to 1 tenant or 4 tenants. A couple of other notes. The proposed sign program amendment itself is Exhibit A in your agenda packet. We've included conditions of approval as well. Those are Exhibit B. CEQA determination today, we've determined that this project is categorically exempt under an exemption for on-premises signs identified in Section 15311 of the California Environmental Quality Act. And as with any sign program or sign program amendment, these signs today, if the City Council approves them, they would apply to both the applicant, the other tenants at the site, and then successor occupants as well. You'll notice that in the images that are included in your agenda packet and in the presentation today, they're not specific to content. They just have that placeholder language that says logo or tenant sign. That's because the applicant and occupants would have discretion how to use them within the design standards that limit things like character height, length, width, colors, etc. So after my staff report concludes in just a moment here, I would recommend that you open the public hearing, receive any public testimony. After you've received that, go ahead and close the public testimony. And staff's recommendation would be that you adopt a resolution titled, "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, approving sign program amendment SP-2024-0001 to amend sign program SP-1508, which allows for various signage at 24902 Moulton Parkway, Laguna Woods, California, 92637, and determining and certifying that the sign program is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15311 of Title 14 of the California Code of Regulations. With that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
All right, we now open the public for a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this particular issue? Catherine, is that, come up, please.
Just a simple question. The south-facing sign, you've got it one big one, and you got it for one tenant. How about for the other tenants in that building? Are you going to have then the south-facing, which is people driving north along Morton, and you have a whole series of signs on that side? They're going to be on the front already, which is typical for most of the commercial buildings, and you're going to have the monument. So why are you going to allow then additional signage on the north, on that, on the south side of that building? And right now you're only showing one sign. What about the other tenants? What if they want to have signs that say, well, somebody driving along, they can see a block away. So that's why I want a big sign there and forget the monument.
All right,
I think you're raising some issues that to me, you got to be consistent within the community, and I don't think that is by allowing that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, have you had any comments from the other tenant that object to this particular proposal?
So I would just note that the sign program amendment was submitted by the artistry, but it requires the property owner's approval. So the property owner has approved the signage. They didn't request additional signage on that frontage. If they wanted to seek approval for additional signage on that frontage in the future, they would have to go through this same process, the sign program amendment. But
Right, thank you.
I mean, essentially, we can only process applications that were provided. They didn't ask for
right.
additional signage.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Yes. Hi.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hatch, Mayor Pro Tem Horn, and the other council members. I'm Lauren Fontaine. I'm one of the owners of the Artistry. I just wanted to give a little bit more context. I think the staff report was very thorough, and the city manager explained the reasons why we're requesting this. One reason is because the building now has many fewer tenants than it once did, and so we're arranging the signage to accommodate only 2 tenants in the building. On the parking lot side, there is some confusion we're having now with customers about which is the main entrance to the building. So we're adding that sign there, and it won't add any additional light to the area. And then the other sign on the south-facing side of the building is to help people coming to be able to see the building and our business as they're coming northbound on Moulton Parkway. All of the signs that we're proposing will be similar to the sign that we've already installed on the building. So they'll have our name and logo, they'll be tasteful, they'll be in line with the city's design standards. So we don't think that anything will be changing as far as the overall aesthetic of the building. So I'm happy to answer any questions or provide additional information.
The other tenant is a dentist, is he not? A professional, usually acts by appointments and that sort of thing, as opposed to walk-in people, right?
Exactly. So I think that's one reason why they're not concerned about having additional signage at this point, because it's not a business where someone's just driving by and happens to see it and stop in unexpectedly. It's a dentist's office on the
All right,
second floor.
thank you. Any questions of Lauren? Thank you very much, Lauren. All right, the public hearing is now closed, and we have a resolution.
I move
I'll
the
entertain a
resolution.
I'm sorry, I
second.
have a.
You have a
I did
question now?
comment, but it was after you closed the, okay, I have a comment, or a question. When we have, I see your point, by the way. I see of driving north and seeing before you've passed. I get that. And I see the signs in the back in the parking lot. But I have a question. It's my understanding that in any of our, like the gas station or the over here or whatever, they cannot put cigarettes or beer or whatever up there. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Do you want to talk about content limitations?
I thought in our ordinance we have that. Am I incorrect? Maybe I'm incorrect.
It's not, I think what you're thinking of is not in our ordinance, but it's in state law regarding display of certain highly regulated substances like cigarettes and alcohol. I don't think that comes from, or I don't think Laguna Woods has similar provisions.
We echo the state's prohibition on cannabis products being visible from outside the building. So that's why if you drive by the artistry, those windows are whited out. That's to comply with both state law and the city's ordinance, which echoes that you can't have that visible from the street. But as far as content on signs.
I want to make sure I understand this, because the temporary sign is what I guess I was referring to. Could you clarify that even more? Because I want to make sure I understand it.
Yeah, so as a general rule, taking a huge step back, we don't have the ability to regulate the content of the sign. The First Amendment says that we can pick the size of the sign. We can regulate to some extent the colors of the sign, whether it's illuminated or not, where on the building it's placed. Those are all within our purview, but what they actually put on the sign, and that's why our sign programs, I think, typically say we're approving tenant and a logo, but we don't weigh in on what the tenant's name is.
I understood that part. No, I get that one. But let's go back once more, because I want to make sure that I understand this part. Because I thought when we were talking about the gas station over here, the gas station wanted to modernize and they wanted to have an electronic sign. And I thought I heard this, because I was a little surprised that they could not put cigarettes and beer and so forth on their sign. Am I correct on that?
So there are limitations under state law on advertising for alcohol and cigarettes. And I think, and I'm not aware of the specific situation you're talking about, so I can't speak to what happened in Laguna Woods, but the state has more purview to regulate advertising of alcohol and cigarettes.
Okay, the reason I bring this up is when we talked about that sign, they were going to have an electronic sign, and this statement was made, and I thought, well, that's true. I don't drive by, and I don't see signs that say beer or cigarettes, two very harmful products. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And yet I'm driving north on Moulton, I look up, and here's a big thing that says cannabis. I thought, well, wait a minute. Is this different?
The short answer is yes, it's different.
So you can't have beer or cigarettes, but you can have cannabis?
Correct. And this is a function of state law and the First Amendment,
I get it.
not
I
our
get
own
it.
code.
I'm just trying to question and get the logic of all this, and it's kind of going past me here. Okay, because I did drive by, I did see it. There was the one in the front, and there's the one on the side. What you're talking about now is a permanent sign up there, and I think the question was asked, and I think these are legitimate questions. The question was asked, I think Catherine brought it up, and what if another tenant comes and said, well, obviously we don't have another tenant, we're only addressing one, but what if another tenant does come? Are we now going to be told, well, wait a minute, you're now discriminating, you had a tenant, you allowed them to do this, how can you turn your voice against this one? So could you respond to that?
With this question, are you referring to that one sign that's going away? There were three, or
I think she's referring to this sign, if another tenant came along and said, we want another sign on this elevation. Is that, you're talking about this sign, right? The one on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
and adding one for what is currently a dental office.
Yeah.
If the dentist office went away and somebody came in who wanted, so you won't necessarily, you're going to go through this exact same process. If a new tenant comes back, I do think that there's something to be said for historically, the city, both staff and council tries to be consistent in how they treat these applications, but it will be a brand new application and you'll go through the same exercise where.
And so there's a historical a precedent that you're setting with this. I'm just trying to figure this out, and I get the picture of driving down the street and you don't see the sign until you've passed. I see the logic to that, so I'm not going to argue that because I think that's factual, particularly when the driveway, that monument sign is past the driveway where somebody would enter. But I guess I have some concerns, and I think establishing a precedent, number one, with this, where would you put another one on there? I don't know. And obviously the other part, there's historical, there's legal, so I can't argue with what the state has done, that you can't advertise beer and cigarettes, but you can advertise cannabis, and I don't get the logic to that one. But then that's the way it is, so we have to go on with it, with something else.
Maybe I can just add a couple of thoughts.
Could you? Go
too,
ahead.
that, so this particular sign, this one as opposed to the other signs that we've talked about today, the design standards allow for stacked text here. So as you see there's two lines of text. Because we're not requiring that this says the artistry or any other specific business, there's theoretically nothing that prevents this sign from being used to say the artistry on the first row of text and Laguna Woods Dental Care on the second. So I don't necessarily think that this sign precludes a second tenant from using it. But if a second tenant did want to come and add the additional sign, we would go through this process again. And we have some sign programs in the city that have been amended 3 and 4 times because needs and wants change over time. What's true of a sign program is that it's intended to provide latitude for businesses to make the best use of their space, but the city council does retain discretion. Now, I recognize that precedent, even if it's non-binding, is a different concept, and I think you should be mindful of that. But if your worry is if somebody comes in, if the property owner comes back to us and says, can I put this exact identical sign below the window there, the city council is not going to be in a position of legally having to say yes to it, but you may find it difficult to say no to it. Mm-hmm. So it's less a function, I think, of law and more a function of what you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. So I'll just leave my comments there.
All right, let's start over here. Annie, do you have anything based upon what you've heard?
No, I don't have any comments, thank you.
We've generally been very accommodating to businesses and their signage, and I definitely see the need for that sign and the need for the sign in the back, so I support this.
Cynthia? I'm good with it. It seems to me the answer is the owner has joined in this request. If not, I mean, the owner has to buy off on this, correct?
Correct.
And so the owner and the major tenant has asked us to do something. And on its merits, there's no reason why we shouldn't do it. And as you, I think, have suggested, if there is a change of circumstances in some fashion, they have to come back to us, and then we review what you raised. All right. Are we ready to vote? All right. Let's do it. All right, you're going to
Yeah,
make the
we do have a
motion.
motion and a second.
All right, we do. You have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 4-1, it passes. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Let's go to now city council business. This does not require the public, I don't believe, since no one has asked to talk about it. 9.1, the megahertz.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to keep my comments brief on this, but long story short, Laguna Woods Village Security has requested the city's assistance in allowing them to reactivate 2 800 megahertz radios that they currently have in their possession. Those radios were donated to them by Doctor's Ambulance some number of years ago. They used those for a period of time to monitor Orange County Fire Authority dispatches. And the agenda report goes into this a little bit more, but essentially the idea is security's ability to monitor those dispatches allows them to respond to the scenes of fires or other incidents inside the village and provide the assistance that they're able to provide to our first responders, whether that be control of a crowd at the scene or access to a unit, et cetera. Those radios, at some point in recent years, stopped working. They had a separate system that they were using to monitor dispatches. That system is expected to be sunset at some point in the future. The MOU that's before you today, the Memorandum of Understanding, would allow both of their radios to be reactivated to the 800 megahertz network. It would transfer ownership of those radios to the city to allow us to coordinate future maintenance and replacement. That maintenance and replacement would be at the Golden Rain Foundation's expense. They'd be either responsible for reimbursing us in certain circumstances or advancing costs for larger expenditures like replacement. The city is involved in this because we are the local signatory to the Orange County Coordinated Communications System that the 800 megahertz radios operate on. So our approval is necessary in order for those radios to be turned on. They will result in some additional costs. We get charged on a regular basis for 800 megahertz radios used by the Sheriff's Department. These 2 radios would be added to that regular invoicing. The difference with these radios is the Golden Rain Foundation would reimburse us for those costs. But from staff's perspective, we view this as a win-win. It's a good thing for Laguna Woods Village Security to be able to monitor this traffic. We did check with the Fire Authority and the Sheriff's Department. Both agencies are supportive of security having this ability to monitor radio transmissions. I'll also note that the Golden Rain Foundation already reviewed the Memorandum of Understanding. They've approved it, so it is ready for signature today if the City Council approves it. And then I would just ask, Tom, do you want to make some comments, or are you? Okay, well, we do have a representative from Village Security here today if you have any questions about how they use it and so forth. But our recommendation is that the City Council approve a Memorandum of Understanding with the Golden Rain Foundation of Laguna Woods to allow for the Golden Rain Foundation of Laguna Woods use of 800 megahertz radios as part of the Orange County countywide coordinated communication system, and authorize the mayor to execute the Memorandum of Understanding subject to approval as to form by the city attorney. Those are my comments. There is an opportunity for public comment. I see out of the corner of my eye that Catherine has some comments, so I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
All right, you're 0 for 1. Now, what have you got?
Open the
Well,
comments,
hey, on the record, I'm old for all of them because,
open the public comment.
okay. What I comment on, I think it's a wonderful program. I don't disagree at all because the majority of the city, most of the residents in the city are behind the walls. What I would like to suggest, though, is that this, and it would be within the legal confines, is that the city pick up the cost instead of putting it on GRF. Because it's a way of helping the community, providing the services, because you're required to be the CCCS by law, and you're gracious, to provide them to us. But I think it's a small cost to say, hey, this is one thing the city can do to pick up the cost for that to be provided. Just the same as you're providing, the taxi services and things like this. This would be part of a service that you can provide because so much of the city expenses or revenue can never be used behind the wall because of federal law. And so every time, in my opinion, that there's an opportunity where the city can participate and help the community and help our expenses within the community, to me it makes sense for you to say, hey, let's change the MOU and just say, we'll pick up all the costs for the operation of those radios.
All right, now
Thank you.
stop while you're ahead. Okay, what do you think about that, Carol?
I thought, my comment, I don't even know how much money we're talking about here.
Tom, off the top of your head, I think the estimate you gave to the Golden Rain Foundation Board was like $1,600 a year, something like that. The replacement of radios is the bigger ticket expenditure. The maintenance is pretty inexpensive. The replacement, which would likely be within, I think we agree, like the next 2 or 3 years probably, that's more like $6,000 to $9,000 a radio. They can be pretty pricey.
And how many radios?
2.
2.
I don't have a strong feeling on it. I thought, and to make sure I understand it, I thought that the purpose of this is if there were, we wouldn't rely on this, obviously, if our system is working. Is that not correct? And so this is only a backup. That's my understanding of this.
This is actually, so this would be their primary way of monitoring the Orange County Fire Authority's radio dispatches. So they would use this every day.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be in lieu of something else. This is just something they would use to listen in.
Okay.
My understanding is every time a fire truck comes out,
Pardon?
I said, every time a fire truck comes out to the station and comes in the gate,
Fine,
our
yeah.
security needs to be informed and helps
True.
providing that service.
And we'll have the new station in a couple of years here also.
That's right.
So-
Maybe. You should know that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you got anything?
Yeah, I do. First, I would say if the cost is $1,600, perhaps it's de minimis. But second, I would say that our city budget is about this much
Right.
compared to the GRF budget. And so your suggestion that the city should just pay for it strikes me as a custodian of the city budget as a little cavalier. The third thing is that GRF asked for this. And the fourth thing is, it's my understanding that GRF could have upgraded or modified existing equipment, but that this is the state of the art and that that's the way they elected to go. So I would oppose, I like this the way it is.
All right.
And GRF has already signed off on it.
What's your thought?
I agree with Councilmember Connors.
I agree with Councilman.
May I comment on her comment?
Chris and
Can I just say, and this is with due respect to
Chris
Catherine.
and I attended a meeting yesterday of all the mayors and the city managers of Diane Dixon's, and most of those were the cities on the coast. I was amazed at how much the cities use their funds to assist residents and things like that, from the Seal Beach one to Huntington Beach and so forth. And finally, we smiled a lot, and then I said, Chris, tell them about the transportation program that we have for our residents here. And every one of those listeners' mouths dropped down as they heard what we do with our transportation. Nobody did anything like that, and I felt very, very proud of this city and what we do on that particular issue. So my feeling is, I kind of like the idea that anything we can, because the water shortage, all of these issues are GRF, third, and all of them, and they're hurting insurance. Those of us who can't get insurance on our homes because of the wildfires and that sort of thing.
Right.
And so I would vote yes. So it looks like we have 1, 2, 3 to 2 right now.
May I comment on Cynthia's comment?
Can I,
though?
before Catherine makes her comments, can I just add a note that, with due respect to Catherine, I think it's important that we manage public comments consistently, item to item. And so earlier, there was some comments made about not having a back and forth with audience members.
No, but it's more fun this way.
We just need to be, I don't want us to treat.
Yes, and I
any
do not look good in
different than
orange,
others.
so I don't want to go.
Be consistent.
All right.
So, I apologize, Catherine.
Okay, Cynthia, I'll sit down and talk to you about your finances.
All right. All right.
Your motion yet?
All right, let's take a vote as originally presented.
I move.
You move as we originally presented. Okay. I'll second that. All right. All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Aye. Okay, unanimous. Sorry, Kathy. All right, let's go to the next item. And these two are, and it would give them together or what?
No, they aren't.
Separated?
They're separate.
right, go.
My comments will be brief on both of them, but we received 2 Orange County grand jury reports this year that we're required to respond to. The first, item 9.2 on the agenda, relates to recyclables and organic waste. In the case of this report, which is included in your agenda packet, all cities in Orange County are required to respond to it, as well as the Orange County Board of Supervisors. This report, our response is due no later than September 10th. As we've done in years past, this happens every time this time of year. California state law has specific requirements for how we're required to respond. We have drafted a proposed response for you that's included as attachment B with this agenda item, but at a very high level, the grand jury is, to my read, concerned with the ability to implement Senate Bill 1383, which relates to, in broad strokes, organic waste recycling. They highlight a number of issues, but chief among them is city's ability to distribute the required carts and bins. There are some color related requirements by the deadline, and then city's ability to comply with the procurement requirements, which require a certain amount of recovered organic waste to be purchased by jurisdictions every year. On both of those fronts, the city is compliant. We have, at the beginning of the contract with CR&R, they distributed carts and bins that meet the requirements of Senate Bill 1383. And as you're well aware from our discussion at last meeting and then some of the corrections that were on the consent calendar today, we have a mulch purchase agreement with the Golden Rain Foundation that plus CR&R's use of RNG in your solid waste collection vehicles brings us into a position of being compliant with the procurement requirements in SB 1383. I will say that we are somewhat unusual in that circumstance. I do not doubt at all that many jurisdictions are having real challenges complying with SB 1383. I just wanted to kind of underline the point that those challenges don't so much extend to us because of some of the things that we've already done. But I think the grand jury raises some fair points about how attainable some of these, the goals in SB 1383 really are. So with that, I can talk about it to any extent that you would like to, but I think at this point it's probably best to open it for any public comments or any council comments, and I'm happy to respond to questions as well.
Any public wish to speak on this particular item? Hearing none, any council members wish to? Hearing none,
I do. I think that one problem there, the amount of, it is still going to the landfill. And I think to acknowledge that there, this continues to be a problem. There is an issue. And I'll even go further, not connected with this one, but I question, believe me, I'm a recycler. I have a pail in my kitchen to collect water and in my shower, so I try to do my duty. However, I think with recycling, let me take the bottles. I think that the amount right now that they've collected on bottles is approaching $1 billion. It's 849 million, which is heading there. Okay, and that's of money that isn't returned, and you get what I'm saying here. And I think I pick up plastic bottles all the time. I pick up all kinds of stuff, and I find this very troubling that I feel like trucks are driving everywhere, but is this really efficient? And I question. So
yeah, and I think that's what the grand jury was at least partly getting to, that it's true that there is a shortage of organic waste disposal infrastructure in the state of California. Now, we, again, are fortunate that our contract with CR&R was entered into at a particular point in time where we were able to send all of our organic waste to their anaerobic digestion facility. But as we point out in our response, that facility isn't local, right? We're shipping our organic waste to Paris, California.
I know.
Out in Riverside County.
Does that make sense?
And, yeah, I mean, there is the state law with which we are required to comply, and then there is the broader policy question. So I think your comments are fair. I get where the grand jury is going on this. I think that we should at least feel fortunate that we are in a position of being compliant with state law when many, if not most, other agencies are really struggling to do so, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't still a problem.
In the response, and I guess in my estimation, I would thank the grand jury for all their work, that we too have concerns and, address, those things as we agree or disagree with the findings. That's the way I would respond.
So our recommendation today was to approve a response to the 2023-2024 Orange County Grand Jury Report, Talking Trash, Recyclables, and Organic Waste, authorize the mayor to execute the response, and direct the city manager to submit the response as required by applicable law.
Then it's brought back, I thought. We've done that before.
No,
you have a draft of the response in your packet right now.
I'm sorry, I didn't read that
He answered all of their issues in
I'm
both
sorry.
of them, yeah. All right,
Okay.
all in
I better
favor?
look real fast.
We do need a motion in a second, sorry.
All right, I thought we had one.
So
Cynthia?
move.
Sherry? We have a motion, we have a second.
Spend a little bit more time on it.
Now, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. Now, would you go to the next one, please?
Sure. Next grand jury report, very different topic. This one relates to e-bikes. Same situation though, all 34 cities in the county are required to respond, plus the county of Orange. This one, because it was released a couple of days later, we have until September 19th to respond. Same requirements of state law apply. There are fewer findings and fewer responses required in this one. I think actually we boiled it down to just a one-page response, but our response does indicate that the city would adopt regulations related to the use of e-bikes on public streets and public property by the end of this fiscal year. The grand jury had a recommendation to do so in December. Timing-wise, that's a bit challenging for us with what else we have scheduled. But as I understand it, the over-under on this report is that the grand jury is highlighting what has been, I think, generally recognized as a challenge, that e-bikes have proliferated probably far beyond what people expected, and the state hasn't kept up with statewide rules of the road or statewide standards for the operation of those e-bikes. And so Tula mentioned earlier when she was talking about Supervisor Foley's efforts that the Orange County Board of Supervisors recently adopted an ordinance related to the use of e-bikes in unincorporated county property. Unfortunately, in the absence of a statewide standard, cities and counties are having to create a patchwork of regulations that, while similar, are not uniform. But we would plan to prepare some regulations for the council's consideration that would be modeled off of that county ordinance to try to maintain as much internal county consistency as possible, and also make it easy for the sheriff's department to enforce. But we would bring those proposed ordinance to you prior to the end of our fiscal year, just not by that December date that the grand jury recommended. But with that, there's another opportunity for public comments and council comments. Our recommendation is that the City Council approve a response to the 2023-2024 Orange County Grand Jury Report, E-Bikes, Friend or Foe, authorize the mayor to execute the response, and direct the city manager to submit the response as required by applicable law.
I have a motion on that proposition.
Open the hearing.
Maybe public comments, if there are any.
All right, public comments are closed. Carol, any comments from the council?
Yes, I did have a quick comment.
All right.
I think that, I like what you've written here. I think that we're pleased to see people using bikes. I think obviously that's a good thing, but the opposite side of that is many times bicyclists want to be pedestrians and bicyclists at the same time, which means that they often do go right through lights. They feel like they can do that, and so you have this, of course, nobody's stopping at stop signs anymore from what I'm observing, or few, or they're brief. They are not making full stops. This is to me, a really big problem, and I think we should be ticketing for that. But anyway, to this, that is the side of it, and I think I think what you've prepared works. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I just think this is a good topic for the grand jury to look at and for the state and for us to look at, because e-bikes and actually they're related e-scooters and there's a few skateboards, e-skateboards. They're neither fish nor fowl. If they're on the sidewalks, they're too heavy and too fast to be zipping around with pedestrians. And if they're on the streets, they're too small and too fragile to be zipping around with the cars. And the fact that even in our city, on our city sidewalks, many of them are piloted by young people without much common sense makes it worse. So I think this is something we have to grow into, and I think this is a fine start.
Thank you.
And I can see a need for regulations on these things, but already the parks won't permit them in there because of the fire risk, and the noise, and the impact on animals. So I can see why each city has to do a different thing, because we all have different conditions. But that's all I have to say about that.
Penny?
I too can see the value in looking at this situation, because on the one hand, people are encouraged to get out of their cars and, conserve gasoline and fuel and conserve the environment. And then on the other hand, the alternative is to use these e-vehicles, bikes and scooters and stuff. And so we've kind of got ourselves in a predicament where we've got to do something, and whatever we do, hopefully it'll save some lives. But I agree, we definitely need some regulations.
It is my understanding that the lobbying that they are doing in Sacramento is fantastic, that they are very heavy lobbyists promoting this thing. My experience with them, I think they're scary, very frankly, particularly when they're operating by young people. And I've seen them weave in and out on the sidewalk and so forth. So it is a process that's going to be slow and in deciding what to do, but it certainly needs to be addressed. So let's have a vote on this. Are we going to submit our reply, yes or no? What he read, right. Let's do a roll call vote. I haven't done one today. Aye. Okay, good. Where are we? 9-4. Chris?
All right. This is your quarterly update of our 11-year capital improvement program. No proposed changes today. Just want to update you on some of the projects that are currently either in design or preparing for construction. First, wanted to mention that since the last quarterly update, we did finish construction of the first phase of the El Toro Road and Moulton Parkway Water Quality Improvement Project. This was the construction of the large bioswale facility on Moulton Parkway, just south of the self-storage driveway, to just north of the Arco AMPM driveway on Moulton. You can see a picture here. The landscaping, once it grows up, you'll really not be able to tell that this is a water quality treatment device, but right now you can see some of the brown retaining walls that are built where the small check dam facilities are. But the general idea is that the water flows into this system from the right, travels down through a series of dam structures and a swale that slows the water down, allows debris to filter out and settle out from that water. And then all the way at the end, I don't know if you can see it where my cursor is, but kind of down here, there's a pipe that runs underneath the sidewalk that any water that somehow doesn't infiltrate into the ground or otherwise get stopped by the treatment device would re-enter the road by traveling through that pipe and back onto Moulton Parkway, but hopefully be cleaner in the process. So this project's now complete. Second phase of this project is expected to begin in September or October, probably the end of September or very early October. We have awarded the construction contract. The notice to proceed will be issued this week. That includes the construction of a modular wetland system on El Toro Road, roughly in the vicinity of Woods End Wilderness Preserve. That modular wetland unit is custom fabricated, and so the delay is really in getting the actual piece of equipment here. Once that's in, the installation will be relatively quickly. There is some underground utility work where we're putting that modular wetland unit requires us to move some of the electrical cabling for the traffic signals in that area. So that'll probably be the biggest, most challenging piece of the project, but we still expect construction to start and stop relatively quickly. We have another project out to bid for the second time. This is phase 4 of the improvements here at City Hall. You may recall that this project, which includes some HVAC improvements in this room, some accessibility improvements in both of the stairwells in the building, some window and door replacements, kind of some odds and ends along the way. That project was out for bid earlier in the year. We received no bids the first time around. We are bidding it out a second time with the hopes that we will actually receive at least one bid that we can live with and move forward. Anecdotally, it does seem that we have more interest from contractors this time around. Those bids are due tomorrow. And then the idea is if we find someone that we can award the work to, that'll be on your next City Council agenda. Phase 5, which is the larger project here at City Hall, this is the long overdue remodeling, reconstruction of the first floor office area. That remains in pre-design. We're still working through some of the conceptual space planning issues with that. Also taking a look at construction phasing to identify the manner in which we can do it with the least disruption on the city's operations and on public services. Once we get a concept a little bit more nailed down, we'll be bringing that to the council for your review and consideration before moving into the actual full design process. And then there's a joint project that you'll recall with the City of Laguna Hills, the Paseo de Valencia Moulton Parkway Confluence Bypass Corridor project. That includes some improvements to traffic signals on both portions of El Toro and Moulton in Laguna Woods, as well as some improvements in Laguna Hills. The Orange County Transportation Authority approved the grant agreement for that project. My understanding is OCTA is working with Laguna Hills as the lead agency to execute that grant agreement, and Laguna Hills is working to draft a cooperative agreement to pull the City of Laguna Woods into that project. So I expect that you'll see those agreements or that cooperative agreement show up on the council's agenda either next month or the month after. The Woods End Wilderness Preserve Trail Drainage and Improvement Project, we are in design on that project. We did make a presentation to the Coastal Greenbelt Authority last week, I believe it was, Coastal Greenbelt Authority voted unanimously to support that project. We've since received a letter of support from them. We also have a couple of projects in design. Some of these are new with the start of the fiscal year on July 1st. This year's ADA Pedestrian Accessibility Improvement Project, which is remarkably the 8th phase of that project, is in design. We are going to be needing to obtain some easements from the Methodist Church in Temple, Judea, to make some improvements on our sidewalks and driveway crossings in front of their properties. We are continuing to work on the conceptual design for City Hall's parking lot improvement project. We are, I would say, in the home stretch of completing a lighting study to make sure that when we improve the parking lot, we do so in a manner that more evenly distributes lighting. The time to run additional conduit and construct additional light fixtures is when the parking lot is torn up. So we have been working with our civil engineering firm to figure out where to place some additional light fixtures to make sure that, in particular, pedestrian interface areas and accessible parking spaces are well illuminated at night. This year's pavement management plan project is also in design. We've executed the agreements with Caltrans for the money that they'll be providing towards that project. This is that westbound portion of El Toro Road, kind of between Gate 9 and just past Woods End Wilderness Preserve. With this project, we also plan to do some restriping in the vicinity of Woods End. That should get us an additional on-street parking space for Woods End Wilderness Preserve and also enhance the visibility of the interface area where, to get to those parking spaces, vehicles have to cross through a bike lane. There's some updated standards for those type of vehicle bike lane crossings, so we'll be including that striping in this project as well. And then finally, the Ridge Route Drive drainage repair project is still in design. This is that deteriorated storm drain on Ridge Route that involves the city of Laguna Hills as well. In this case, once we get a cooperative agreement in place for the traffic signal project, we plan to repurpose that cooperative agreement for this project, which is the opposite, with us in the lead agency role and Laguna Hills providing some financial support for the project as well. So those are your updates. There's no action required on this item unless the council wants to provide some input to us on these projects. But otherwise, this is just an informational item. There's an opportunity for public comments and council member questions.
All right, any public wish to speak on this? Any council members' comments? All right. We don't approve it then? All right, go ahead, Cynthia.
You asked for input from the council. I want to say, nice job, keep marching.
Fair enough.
Thank you. All right. 9.5, Carol, tell us about sign regulations. What do you think?
I know that everyone here is aware that we had a notice that our adjoining city was considering a sign, and that sign would totally be inappropriate for gates 5, 6, particularly gate 6, and totally inappropriate for the church nearby. So, Chris, I believe you may have contacted the mutuals. I also contacted, sent some emails, and then I called someone in United and told them that this was coming up. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that I contacted 2 people I knew who belonged to the church, and that was Alan Williams and Claire Baker, because I thought, well, if I could get their support and get the church involved, this would be better. So, and although I didn't hear from them, they did contact their church, and a church member contacted me and said she was going to go to the meeting and expected me to be there too, of course. So I obviously went to the meeting. Thank goodness there was no one there. Not one mutual showed up. I was really quite disappointed because when they gave the numbers, they said a 65-foot sign. They said 45, they said 60, 65. 65-foot sign is pretty tall, and this would be a sign that would be digital. We'd be changing. This is not something you want across from your home, and it would be just totally inappropriate to be next to the church. the council was very pleasant and very nice about the whole thing. I don't think they had thought about it, and they certainly never thought about its effect on the housing and the church. So I don't think they had a real large problem with it. However, when they got through, because one of the council members was really continued to push this situation, and so they did not remove this property in consideration to continue to look and see if such what. I don't think they were going to go through. Some numbers were thrown out. Obviously, income always entices some council members to fall for anything. And so anyway, that's the way it ended. So when I got through, I came back and I thought, wow, we should be thinking about do we oppose billboards? I mean, billboards are what you expect in a low-income community. You do not expect to drive down your community. Look at our community, and I'm going to give you an example of something here. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was driving in Los Angeles. As I was driving along, I've told this story. I looked ahead as far as I could see to the north, south, east, and west. There was not one tree, not one. I thought, how in the world did this get like this? I was just astounded that you could be driving along, and we're talking right now that cities are the heat sinks from all the paving. So I looked as I was driving along, and I thought, wow, what I noticed as I drove along, people had taken out all their landscaping in the front of their house. They were right next to the street. They'd taken all the landscaping, they'd fenced so that they could park their SUVs, whatever, on their property. And I looked at it probably started with one. If somebody had spoken up and said, hey, we need to keep some vegetation here, apparently no one did. And now that's the way it is. And I realized you can change our community. You think we have a gorgeous community, and we do, and I think we're all proud of it. You could change it. You cannot believe how quickly you can change that community by starting to do things that are inappropriate for your community. So I really got to thinking about it, and I think you mentioned that you had some suggestions. I thought, I think it's a good time for us to consider what we consider appropriate, and a tall billboard or digital sign is totally inappropriate, and I would hope we would never place such a thing near someone's home. And that's what I did say to the council. I said, these are our homes, and I don't think you would want a 60-foot digital sign outside your house. So they were very nice. I have no complaints there, but it's still on their agenda, and I thought we really should be talking about what we consider to be appropriate. And that's why I put it on here. We don't have anything that really states this, I don't think. So there you go.
So I can make some comments. First, on the Laguna Hills billboard issue, the city, just for the benefit of the viewing audience at home, we will certainly be weighing in more officiously and sending correspondence before their September meeting when they'll be considering that item again. With respect to our sign ordinance, the timing is actually good today because this is something we're already working on. The city has a sign ordinance. It, among other things, is where we get the authority to issue sign programs and sign permits, et cetera. Later this year, sometime this fall, we're planning on bringing some recommended amendments to the council for your consideration. Now, I'm going to preface my comments by saying we haven't gotten into the weeds on this, but we are far enough on it that I can give you a general flavor of where our recommendations will lie. And then to Councilmember Moore's point, if there are specific things you want us to look at, we're not looking for final feedback from anybody today, but if there are certain things you want us to look at, like the billboard issue, which our code does prohibit, but we could probably strengthen the prohibition, I'm happy to take that feedback today and fold it into what we're already working on. If I had to sum up the primary purpose of the amendments that we are likely to propose, there's really two things we're trying to do. One is, we've been working on objective design standards. You adopted 2 interim ordinances earlier in the year related to new construction. Some of those standards relate to signs. We plan to fold those standards into our sign ordinance for consistency across our code, but also, I think, take a broader look at what objective design standards might look like when applied to temporary signs, which is something that's not currently substantially contemplated by the code. And I think it connects to the conversation that you had earlier during item 8.1, that maybe we can't control content of signs, but we can say these colors are okay, these are not okay, sizes that are okay are bigger than this, smaller than this, in this dimension, et cetera. So we will be looking at some of those objective design standards. Our current sign ordinance was last amended in 2014. There are still references in that ordinance to content-based sign standards that are wholly unenforceable. We are not enforcing them currently, but they remain in our code. So we do want to do a level of cleanup to remove the things that are just outright unenforceable. Those are the two main prongs of what we're looking at, but there are some additional things that we've already identified that we want to take a look at. One is that issue of illuminated signs facing residential areas. Without getting too into the weeds on this, there's an existing prohibition within 100 feet of a residential zoning district. But then the code allows the city council to override that in its sign program, if it so chose to. We are looking to strengthen the prohibition on illuminated signs. There's really, to our mind, a whole lot of harm that can come from bright illuminated signs facing residences. So we want to strengthen some of that, and we also want to include some notification requirements so that if there is a proposal for an illuminated sign in close proximity to a residential structure, that the applicant through the city be required to provide some notice of the city council's consideration of that to those potentially affected residences. So we'll be looking at that issue. The two most common types of temporary signs that businesses come to us asking for are temporary banner signs and temporary A-frame signs, which are like the folding freestanding signs. Right now, there are some display durations and limitations on where those signs can be located that I think warrant a second look. We'll have some recommendations for you, but I suspect that you'll have your own thoughts on that as well. I think that's an area we need to spend a little bit of time because those are the two things that businesses always want. And I want to make sure that our standards reflect your desires, since again, this code was last updated in 2014 under a completely different council. And then finally, there are some things I think we can do with permit applications to streamline the processing of these a bit, particularly on the temporary sign side. There are some permit requirements that I think are maybe a little bit onerous that don't really do a good job of accomplishing a clear purpose. And then on the permanent sign side, right now we require separate applications for planning approval of a permanent sign and building approval of a permanent sign. There's definitely, to my mind, an ability to consolidate that permit requirement into a single application that saves time, energy, and cost for both the city and businesses or other applicants. So that's kind of the framework we're looking at. Not to say there won't be other things that we recommend, but at this very, very preliminary stage, that's what we're interested in taking a look at. But if there is anything else that you would like us to specifically take a look at, happy to do that. And then just a reminder, there is an opportunity for public comment on this item as well.
I was hoping height might be in there, some general.
Yeah. So all of our standards right now include restrictions on height. I think that it's unlikely that you would think that anything in the current code is allowed to be too high. If anything, I think our code limits the height of some permanent signs to a point that it almost forces most applicants to go through a sign program process because we require things to be so low to the ground. And that, may be fine. You may want to look at it, but as far as really tall signs like billboards or pole signs,
particularly.
Yeah. So our code does prohibit billboards right now, but again, I think there are ways that we can strengthen that prohibition.
Maybe we better define too what we.
Yeah, I think definitions are important, but I also think if there's a desire to not allow billboards, there are some things we can do to strengthen sign program requirements to prevent a sign program from being used to override the prohibition in the code. So I think I get where you're trying to go on it. We can definitely bring back some thoughts in that space. From staff's perspective, there's nothing appropriate about a billboard in this community, so we would operate
There is
under
one
that
other thing, too. It
guidance.
seems to me when a neighboring city has something that we feel could be harmful for our community, it seems to me we should notify them right away, because otherwise they were spending money to examine this, and that's a cost to their city. If we're objecting to a piece of property, specifically we were, to a piece of property, I think we have, to me, you should let them know right away, because they hadn't, I know most of the people on there, well, I don't even know if any of them considered the effect of this on the neighboring piece of property. So they were spending money to do a study that was not a good idea for us. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Any other comments on that? Cynthia?
I drove past this parcel where the big globe used to be. It's at the tail end of the Episcopal Church property, and it's a parcel that's smaller than this room. Just a tiny little area of dead grass with a round foundation on it, and right across the street from our Gate 6 residence. I want to mention that a number of the churches in our city have been giving thought to converting their monument signs to LED signs, because you know that, for example, Geneva Church at Calle Sonora has all these canvas banners tied up on PVC poles, and they could replace all of those if they had a video sign that says, you know, Geneva Church service at 10:30. Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church meets at 9:30. Vacation Bible School, July 3 to 17. Easter sunrise service, and they could just rotate those kinds of messages on a single sign. And I think a number of the churches in our community have given thought to that. So I hope that our sign regulation, and we can put in color restrictions, we can put in, how many lumens they can put out at night and stuff like that to make sure that our residents are not troubled. And most of them, of course, are facing our streets and not facing our residences. But I'd just like you to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Anything else? Do you want a motion to proceed?
No, you don't need a motion. I think there was a public comment. Did you?
Okay.
At least one?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay.
Wanted to commend Chris on streamlining permitting. When you're a business-friendly city, you bring in valuable services to our city.
Sorry, I think the mic died.
It's been beat up today. You bring in valuable services to our city, and you also bring in good revenue that we could use to our city. So, Chris, good idea on, going through the permitting process and streamlining it, making it easier for businesses to thrive here.
Thank you. All right.
And I'm sorry, I think Mike had a comment as well.
The mic to mic. Is it on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a sort of principle here. Our villa right outside the front door, we can look down at the spectrum. There's a huge sign there. I have a feeling it's the kind you're talking about. It's really flashy, and I find a bit offensive. When we used to drive from Santa Fe down towards Albuquerque, as we got closer and closer to our turnoff, there were all of these signs flashing away, demanding the attention of your mind to those commercial interests. And when you approach Las Vegas, there's a huge sign as you're getting there. It's distracting. It's actually kind of dangerous, I think. And I find it offensive that it would be offensive to allow companies to start demanding our attention as we drive around our neighborhood. And I do think that you'd see a rapid deterioration of that corridor if you started opening the door to inroads of companies that would like to put their advertising signs and flashy materials to distract you as you're driving around our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
You
Anybody
can just
else?
leave it on the counter, I think, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, the This is now closed on reports, and we come now to item 10, City Council reports and comments. We've already had one indication about the Coastal Greenbelt Authority, and now bring us up to date, if you would, Annie.
So the Greenbelt Authority did meet last week here, and as always, they express their sincere gratitude for the City of Laguna Woods for allowing them to have their meetings here in the council. So we meet here. In addition to what Chris said about the presentation to the Greenbelt, oh no, not yet. I'm not ready for the lizard.
It's all right.
I'm going to lead up to the lizard. The authority did appreciate the presentation that Chris made, and they did write a letter to the OC Parks, supporting the project completely. There was a report from the OC Parks that 2 of their park rangers got recognized by the American Red Cross for their life-saving measures using AED devices. And so they use that opportunity to highlight the fact that the ranger stations are equipped with AED devices, and also some of the vehicles are equipped with AED devices. So that was good information for the Greenbelt Authority to hear. Now, there was a presentation about lizards. First of all, there's an organization called the National Communities Coalition, and they partnered with the United States Geological Society. What they've been doing for the last 2 years is working on a study of invasive lizards. And these are known as Sonora spotted whiptails. And the purpose of the collaborative study was to establish whether this invasive whiptail is a true threat to the native orange-throated, which is another whiptail. So they want to see if this whiptail is a threat to the native one. And they clarified a few things about these different types of lizards. So now I can have my lizards. So they were looking at 2 types of lizards. One is the orange-throated whiptail, which is a lizard which is native to the coastal habitat. And it's one of the species that drove the development of national conservation. They want to preserve the species of lizards. But there's another type of lizard that has made its way into the wildlife, and it's called the Sonora spotted whiptail, and looks very similar to the orange-throated whiptail. But what's unique about this particular lizard is that it's a female lizard, and it can produce fertile eggs without mating. This allows for faster population expansion of the invasive species, and it would pose a risk to the native species. And so, which is different from the orange-throated whiptail is mated whiptail lizard. It requires a male and a female, whereas the other one is a female, and it produces these eggs that fertilize themselves. And what they're finding is that these invasive species of lizards have made their way into Orange County via way of shipping succulents from other parts of the country. So they find their way into plants and stuff from places like Arizona and in the desert. And so they come into the community, and they're mingling with the regular lizards, and the concern is that they may be harmful to this protected species of lizards. So they've been looking at these 2 different types of lizards, and that's the one that's on the screen now is the spotted whiptail, and the other one, can you show the other one, Chris? And that's the native one. And there's not much of a difference to the naked eye, but apparently the people that have been doing the studies have some real concerns that this invasive species is coming in and may harm the natural habitat. So this is a 2-year study, and they don't have a lot of conclusive information so far, and they will provide the Greenbelt Authority with some additional information as they get it. So we thought it was a really good, informative presentation about lizards. So there we have it.
I have a lizard in my condo. we've grown very close. So he's only about that big,
Yeah.
but boy, does he move around. So
Yeah.
those are okay, I guess.
Well, I think they're both okay,
I'm
but
sorry.
one is native to the habitat, and the other one could potentially be invasive. And what that would do is wipe out the native one, and then they would just produce, because they can produce so rapidly without a male. They just keep producing and produce, and they could overtake
Okay.
the native species.
All right, thank you. Yoli, did the video get to you from Matt Olson from the Fire Authority?
yes, we have it.
Okay, are you ready to show it? Yes. Okay. All right, this is the dinner of the Fire Authority, the best and the bravest, and it will. I don't think it will match what the sheriffs did at their presentation, because that was a powerful tool that you had at their dinner. But this is simply the introduction and the announcement of the dinner, not the thrust of what the Fire Authority has done this past year, even at Cook Corner, where the Fire Authority, in some respects, had a tougher job than the sheriffs did, because the sheriffs were focused on one thing and people were dying and all around, and they couldn't get to them quickly. So this was just the introductory announcement of the best and bravest dinner, which last week Chris and I attended.
Wear capes, but some use belay devices or carabiners or whatever equipment's needed to stabilize a building. We're very excited to introduce you to the Orange County Fire Authority's Technical Rescue Team.
The OCFA serves an area of nearly 2 million people. At any given time, they have 4 teams, 3 technical rescue trucks, and 1 heavy rescue ready to launch.
Firefighters don't just fight fires, they also save lives when it comes to the snow. The woman who survived a horrific car crash last month in Orange County got the chance to thank the firefighters who saved her life.
It's really awesome that I get to say thank you to everybody who actually helped me, like, and saved me and rescued me.
Okay.
Is the other one, do they have the money, or he's gone? You have the money for the new fire station in '25?
No, it's going to be, I think, when is it set for, 27 or 20? 26?
Really?
Yeah. As of, at its May 23rd, 2004 OCF Board of Directors meeting, the board approved the fiscal 2024-25 operating and capital improvement budget, which serves the overriding policy direction for both the ensuing year and for the 5-year outlook, for the next 5 years. Director Hatch applauded staff and so forth and requested that a simple note from Deputy Chief Zeller or Assistant Chief Cortez that summarized the OCF's positive budget outlook and the Board of Directors' integral role in its development and approval. And here is the report on the next 5 years of the Fire Authority budget. In collaboration with the Board of Directors and through the years of sound fiscal planning, the OCFA proudly matches its renowned all-hazard emergency services with unprecedented fiscal excellence. It is a testament to the OCFA's financial health and the Board of Directors' strategic planning that the agency's operating and capital improvement program budget is not only balanced for the current fiscal year, but also projected to remain so through a 5-year forecast, 2025 through 28, 29. Endless achievements are interwoven in this success, from the protection of 100% funded status for pension and retiree medical abilities, 100%, to sufficient funding for critical capital improvements needs such as new facilities, apparatus, equipment, and technology. As impressive as all that is, the biggest fiscal point of pride stems from the fact that the OCFA is now financially empowered to deliver enhanced fire, medical, and all-risk services to its diverse communities today, tomorrow, and many years in the future. And that is my report from OCFA. We now go to the library board,
There's
our
no
wonderful
meeting.
library.
A lot of programs at the library, though I'm sure people are going in there, are
Oh, yeah.
participating. Yes.
And with Aliso Creek Library, Aliso Viejo Library closed,
Yes,
They-
for refurbishing.
they are now
Yeah.
coming here
Right, yeah.
instead of going away.
Yeah, so we're getting that too. You're right.
All right, is there anything else on the library then? The mosquito and vector control.
Okay, thank you. We found our first West Nile virus positive mosquitoes this year in Huntington Beach. And it's always trouble there because of their wetlands and everything. So it's a good place for it to, it's a usual place for it to start, not a good place for it to start, but there's only been, it's starting very slow this year, but we'll find out when more are caught in the trap. But dengue is becoming a real problem here. As dengue continues to increase in areas worldwide and in some localized areas of the United States, the CDC has issued a health alert. With the increase of dengue in other countries and regions, staff is reviewing response plans, training, preparing to respond to travel-related dengue cases, and the potential for a local dengue transmission case in Orange County. Please remember that to date, Orange County has not had any local dengue transmission. There's other diseases like dengue that we've never had here before, but because of invasive species, we now have them, because before we didn't have the mosquitoes that would transmit them. Now we do. So doctors have to be made aware of the symptoms so that when someone comes in, that's one of the questions. Have you been bitten by a mosquito? So dengue isn't usually deadly, and it's not neuroinvasive like West Nile virus, but it's something to watch out for, and we should still all do the usual stuff and make sure there's no standing water around our houses, and if you're going to be outside, to wear long sleeve, light colored clothing, and of course, an insect repellent with DEET. on your skins or even on your clothing so that they won't even land if you don't like wearing it on your skin. But make sure your plant saucers here locally, that's really where they collect, are in our plant saucers. Even in drains, if you don't run the shower in your second bathroom very often, do it at least once a week because there's always water in there and you want to be sure and flush out any mosquitoes, because just getting a bite is one thing, but getting a disease is something else, and especially for a senior population, we have to be careful. So that's my report.
That's good. Thank you much. Transportation corridor, Councilmember Connors.
We had no meeting because there were no time-sensitive items. That's the first time that's happened in about 10 years.
Anything you'd like to share with us about life general then?
No.
No, you're okay?
Yeah, but I do have another meeting to report on at the end.
Okay, go ahead. Do it now? Later? All right. Watershed management, Carol, nothing?
No, we didn't have a meeting.
All right. Liaison to community bridge builders, the two ladies on my right, they're fighting now just to see who's going to get the report.
You could go
All
ahead.
right. Sherry.
Bridge builders, our last program was that we had a Muslim, a Christian, and a Jewish faith leader. Well, the Muslim guy wasn't a faith leader. The person canceled at the last minute, so he was replaced. But they were talking about what the different religions have in common as to beliefs and love and friendship, and how we can all overcome some of the hate that's out there in the name of religion. It provides help and comfort to a lot of people, but to others, it's like, no, mine is perfect and yours is not. George Carlin did a great routine on, do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe in my God? No. Anyway, it was a very funny routine, but it was a very well-attended program, and it was interesting, and it was part 1 of 3. We'll be bringing back part 2 and 3 later with different religions.
Did you leave feeling optimistic? I mean, that it resonated at all? Or is it
I
high
left
on
with
the
a
scale?
lot of questions.
Did you? Okay.
Because I know that all religions preach that, but there is a lot of dissension in the world, and why isn't?
Why?
Yeah, why?
Annie, anything you want to comment on?
Just basically what Sherry's already said. The feedback that I got from participants was that it was very much needed. They really appreciated hearing from different faith beliefs, and their willingness to come back again, and their willingness to come together as a community.
Thank you. All right. Now, other comments and reports.
I attended a meeting of the Garden Villa Association that focused on disaster preparedness. And actually, I never get to the Garden Villa Association because it meets the same time as the toll roads. So since the toll roads was canceled, then I went to the Garden Villa Association. And there was an interest from several people into a program called CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team. And ours, it's a government function. It comes downhill from FEMA. And our city has organized CERT teams in the past, but we've run into problems because a very substantial portion of our members are not equipped to do search and rescue, and some of them can't get down on the floor to do CPR and things like that. And we've run into problems because people have agreed to serve on these teams, but then they've had their own health problems, and so they've come back in and turned in their materials, and so it's been hard for us to keep that sort of thing going. But I've been talking to Chris about it, and I think the city will be moving in a direction to provide individual training on disaster preparedness, CPR, basic first aid, how you can check in with your neighbors, and those kinds of things, so that people in our city who are interested in being disaster ready and in being good neighbors can become themselves trained to do that. And that will increase the resilience of our community. So we're going to be working on doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Tula, send our regards to Katrina, and thank you for staying for the full meeting. You're
She's
welcome
still awake.
anytime. If you have time off and on a Wednesday, just drop by, okay?
It's a long
Thanks.
time. I was really tired.
Catherine, thank you.
I did,
And
'cause
you
we were
too, thank you for coming. And thanks much for you, candidates, thank you for coming. And to our esteemed guests over here, okay. Keep us safe, will you? Okay. All right. We will now take a 5 to 10 minute recess, and the council will meet again in closed session. We'll ask Chris, or our city attorney, if she will introduce into that meeting.
Yes, the city council will be meeting in closed session under the authority of California Government Code Section 54957B1 to consider the annual performance evaluation of the city manager. And there is an opportunity for public comment before
All right?
we adjourn to closed session.
Right
not
before
adjourn.
we adjourn, there is?
Or The public may comment if they'd like to before we recess to closed session.
All right, any comments on that? Then we're into closed.
Sorry, I think Vicky had a comment.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Vicki.
sorry.
Is it on? Okay. I just wanted to say Chris Bacon has been very responsive. I think he's really bright, great city manager. So I vote for a raise or whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. All right. All right, we will adjourn to closed session. Back in session with a majority of 4 on the council here, and our city manager and city attorney. We will now provide the closed session report. Council?
The City Council met in closed session under the authority of California Government Code Section 54957B1 to consider the annual performance evaluation of the city manager, and there's no reportable action.
Thank you. We will now adjourn this council meeting to the next meeting on Wednesday, August 21, 2024 at 2 p.m. in the Laguna Woods City Hall. This meeting is adjourned.